This dude is Nagi, yeah, like that lil sucker from Blue Locker, but while that dude kicks balls, this one takes balls. Pause. I mean, not only balls, dude has this infinite bag where he can put anything and everything inside like your favorite OUEF creator. But unfortunately, Lil Bro is in the lowest white rank possible. At least he's so good at filling that bag he is paid 5 times more than your average porter. But Nagi's dream is to become a real adventurer, the ones that actually fight. But in this world, having no talents is like being born at 1 and 50 centimeters and being an ugly dude. You don't have the luxury of choosing anything. So he just works as a porter for his whole life. But I gotta give credit. Even without skills, Nagi's has a genius way to fight by using multiple items from his bag, creating traps, item combos, and even paradises inside dungeons for adventurers to relax. But that's of course is not enough. And when he's about to forfeit this dream, he meets this gigantic thighed female called Agnisa, a S-rank goddess that I would like to step on me with black stockings. When that happens, I mean Nagi meeting her, he starts to discover that his years and years of observing adventurers in the dungeon have been teaching his body more than he thought. Also, bro's like Rock Lee and has been practicing the same slash for ages. Now, it's time for Nagi to become an actual adventurer and eradicate the dungeons that killed his family from this world. But is that really possible? How can the lowest rank become strong enough to face off dungeons without a Sung Jin Woo system that makes you climb ranks by doing push-ups? This story has genius boy, thick thighs, and insane art. What more you want, Gi? Let's get it. The boy starts off saying, "This world I live in is full of all kinds of dungeons. A cave-type dungeon is created, a labyrinth-type dungeon gets added, and there's even a Tower of Trials. This is a world of grand dungeons and countless treasures lie within them. In this place, the greatest honor someone can achieve is becoming an adventurer and gathering wealth from the dungeons. But not just anyone can become an adventurer. You have to be one of the chosen. And him? Doesn't really seem like it, right? He's just walking through the brush with a giant backpack on his back. Near the country borders, you see folks trying to cross like that too. There's probably 3 rags stuffed in that sack. Tomato Nose looks at him and says, ahead of here is the dungeon. Only those with permission are allowed to enter. But then he notices the boy's little necklace and asks if he's a bag, and yeah, this guy's the sucker of the day. His rank is white porcelain. Name, Nagi. Oh, what, you getting in to kick a ball or something? The old guy then says, go on and already. But I gotta say, it's kinda embarrassing, you showing up late with nothing but a backpack. Apparently, adventurers these days don't know the meaning of respect. But where are the other porters? Normally, you pay 50 gold coins and a bunch of them show up to carry everything. Nagi pats his chest and says that apparently he's one of the best when it comes to hauling big stuff. His salary alone is 50 gold coins. The guy claps sarcastically and asks if he's lying. Tells him to quit the nonsense because for that kind of money, they should have sent 4 or 5 people. Then the lube-mouth kid replies, you see those backpacks? You're not only going to carry those, you're also going to have to haul the luxuries from the dungeon. Think you can handle that? And now that I'm actually looking at him, I thought this guy was a guard, but it looks like he's gonna be part of Nagi's party. Then he says that if the kid can't handle it, you can go ask the association for help right now. Nagi walks up and says, damn, you guys have a lot of stuff for a group of just 4. While thinking, he notes that this reaction is pretty common. It's not normal for a porter to earn 50 gold coins a day when most only get 10. In cases like this, instead of making excuses or trying to explain, it's better to just show how it's done. He tosses the big pack to the ground, grabs all the smaller backpacks, and starts stuffing them inside. The guys by the campfire are all just watching, and the moment they realize he's using a magic backpack you already know, they're gonna want to steal it. Everyone's scratching their heads, wondering where the items went, how this magic thing works, how much it costs. Nagi, all crooked from the weight, says, sorry loser, only I can use this, so back off. The other blonde dude tells them to stay put. As impressive as the backpack is, what difference is it gonna make in a real fight? After all, the kid was only hired to carry items. This guy's name is Jepnam. Yeah, weird name, gold rank. He throws his arm forward and says that Nagi better be worth every single gold coin. Obviously, he needs to perform as well as 5 people or it's not worth the cost. Nagi wonders if this guy is the leader of the group. He seems like a hardest, but it's fine. After all, he's a professional porter. And before this dungeon run ends, he's gonna make sure everyone walks out happy. This Nagi is a peculiar one, and now he starts explaining why he earns way more than the other porters. It's not just because of his ability to carry a ton of stuff. It's also because he makes adventurers extremely satisfied. Alright then, adventurers go into dungeons to hunt and face all kinds of danger, traps that can be triggered at any time, ambushes from monsters, and coordinated attacks. These guys are taking heavy hits, and this is exactly the kind of situation Nagi has been preparing for. The stress of being in a place like that is intense, and he knows how to handle it. The blonde guy yells, didn't your balloon heads get told to keep your guard up, idiots? One blames the other. Nobody wants to admit they messed up. Watching all this, Nagi says he took advantage of that gap in the market. What is he? A coach. And here he comes, pulling out the giant backpack and calling everyone over, saying he knows they must be starving after non-stop hunting. That's why a top-tier meal just arrived. The two clueless guys stare at him, drooling, trying to figure out what that amazing smell is. Yep, the kid really brought a feast. That's his secret skill, dungeon restaurant. Tomato Cheek is biting into the protagonist's meat and says it's delicious, like it was just freshly made. The other one, the veggie guy, agrees too. Dude's emotional. He's never eaten anything this good inside a dungeon. Right away, they ask if Nagi's backpack really keeps everything fresh or if it's some kind of natural ability. What's going on? He says he can't explain too much. The important part is, it's way too early for them to be impressed. And then with a quick motion, bam, he pulls out a whole bathtub for the guys. The bearded guy wonders if he's somehow at a resort all of a sudden. The surroundings weren't exactly paradise, but the feeling, it was amazing. Then, out of nowhere, the blonde guy calls out to them. He asks if, by any chance, they think they're on vacation. Are they seriously not realizing they're still in the middle of a dungeon? What they needed was discipline. Still, he's not gonna lie. This water is heavenly. So he says he has no choice but to enjoy it a bit himself. Then he goes, man, I really wanted to believe you were worth those 50 gold coins. I was even thinking about complaining to the association and asking for compensation. But now I realize with everything you've brought to the table, 50 gold coins was a bargain. Nagi nearby says that dungeon crawling is definitely exhausting. People think the hard part is just fighting monsters, but there are tons of other issues that come up. Some hunters end up starving, can't fight properly, and die. And as a porter, he always keeps in mind, he only gets paid if the adventurers make it through the dungeon. That's why he puts in his best effort to make sure they succeed. The bearded guy laughs and says this kid is way too humble. Not even if they hired the top folks from their guild would they be treated like this. He'd never felt anything like it before. That bath filled him with energy, and now he's sure he can take on any enemy. He jumps up, all fired up, and Magi looks to the side like, this dude's out of control. But just like he said, things inside went smoothly after that. The group was already skilled in combat, so they handled huge swarms of monsters with ease. The real issue, as always, was the boss. That's because these kinds of monsters are obviously full of randomness and unpredictability. The blonde guy says this one's especially sneaky. Looks like that T-Rex from Toy Story, walking all wobbly, while everyone's yelling not to let it get an opening. The beast lifts its claw, slams it down, and one of the guys dives to the side and fires an arrow straight into its hand. The attack triggers a spider web trap, but even so, the creature charges forward and whips its tail, slamming it right into his shield. But the blonde guy swings in from the side, draws his sword, and lands a solid hit with his positive attribute talent, slicing off that tail clean. Obviously, the boss keeps firing off some little magic attacks, but the blonde guy's blocking like a champ, and man, they really are tanking through it. Suddenly, the boss unleashes fire everywhere while Nagi stays hidden. This boss is the Zarkum Lizard, a rank B creature. Based on what he's seen from the party so far, Nagi estimates they've got an 80% chance of winning. But 80% still means there's a 20% chance of failure. And if they lose, Nagi gets nothing. So he's got to make sure it doesn't happen. A little help wouldn't hurt. He rummages through his backpack, finds something, and says that this should do the trick. These guys already have the strength. All he needs to do is create a small opening. It's just a shame they'll have to use this mimic mushroom, which is ridiculously expensive. But as always, the main goal is to finish the job. The boss charges in again, ready to chomp right down on the blonde guy. But Nagi says it doesn't matter how unpredictable its moves are. All he needs is to calculate the perfect moment and throw it. The boss sees the giant mushroom coming. It explodes right on its head in a thick cloud of smoke. While the creature's coughing and reeling, the blonde guy asks what that was. Nagi simply raises a pom-pom and says the perfect chance to attack has arrived. The blonde guy grins. He uses the opportunity to scale the beast's tail, climbs up its back, makes his way to the top of its head, and drives his weapon straight into the skull. Man, that thing weighs like 500 kilos. It just crushes the lizard's dome. Right after, he gets up, compliments everyone's effort, and tells them to gather the loot. And just like that, that day's dungeon was wrapped up without much trouble. But as always, the cheerful mood didn't last long. That's because they were supposed to collect at least 20 rank B stones from that creature. But in the end, they only got 5 stones and a bunch of low-level items. And what made it worse was that most of the monsters that showed up this time were just basic creatures like goblins. If you put everything on a scale, who was there, who took part, what they actually earned, it was clearly a total loss. And now they have to split the loot, which already wasn't much to begin with. In a split second, the cheerful mood from finishing the dungeon just vanished, and now everyone's yelling at each other. Even something as simple as dividing up the rewards became a sensitive subject, but it's fine. That kind of thing happens with adventurers. Nagi's just there to carry items, so he doesn't care about all that. Besides, his salary is fixed, he's not stressing about any of this. So he pulls out 2 bottles and calls everyone over, saying they must be thirsty. The blonde guy asks if he's seriously still looking after the group even now that the job's over. And he admits it, that smoke grenade Nagi threw at the boss was the clutch moment of the fight. Honestly, they got super lucky having run into this kid. I don't know, this blonde guy's acting way too nice. Our boy says he's just giving a hand with the humble skills he's got. But Jepnum cuts in saying no, that's not humble at all. The more he sees, the more impressed he gets. That backpack of his creates some insane stuff, and it doesn't even seem to have a limit. Maybe there's more valuable stuff inside that thing than in the entire dungeon. Just because I said it. Now they're all wondering if there's a pretty decent stash of money hidden in there. I mean, if he gets paid 50 gold coins every time he joins a dungeon run, he's definitely racked up a fortune. They really did hit the jackpot finding this kid. Everyone's looking at him now, with that greedy look in their eyes. Nagi tries to brush it off, saying, "Hey fellas, this conversation's getting kinda weird, how about you drink this instead?" But they smash the bottle in his hand. He dodges the first arrow. The second one's already coming as they start asking themselves what the hell they're doing. He pulls a full-on Matrix move, dodges again, and tells them to just say what's going on. The bearded guy apologizes, says it was a mistake. He just wanted to end it quickly and without pain. They had to understand an adventurer can't risk their life and walk away empty-handed. The guy with the beanie adds, "Hey man, don't blame us. Things are rough for us too, you know. We gotta pay taxes, you get it. Besides, you got way too much stuff in that backpack and someone who's just here to carry gear isn't even gonna use it." Nagi starts getting up, wondering if it's always gonna be like this. People act like it's normal for a porter to die in the middle of a dungeon, because technically they're not supposed to know how to fight. And obviously, if they kill him right now, they'll just say he got taken out by a goblin or something. Whatever. No one's gonna care. The happy expressions those guys had when they were thanking him for all the help, gone. Just like that. Now they're looking at him like he's loot. But he's not shaken. Not surprised either. Because this is familiar. The truth is, this kind of thing happens all the time in this world. A place where everything you can achieve in life is decided the moment you're born. And of course, the treatment someone like him gets, a porter, is among the worst. Nothing changed the day he was born, and nothing's changed since. He remembers clearly the moment he found out that his skill was a backpack. The looks of disgust everyone gave him after seeing it. That hot receptionist from the guild, she straight up told him that with a skill like his, he'd never qualify to be an adventurer. His job was always going to be transport. If he wanted to enter a dungeon, it'd be as someone hauling stuff in a bag. Nagi never even had the chance to become an adventurer. That one stamp on his record locked in his profession, and that was the end of it. That's probably what these guys are thinking right now too. Q-Tip tells him to stop resisting and just die already, then leaps forward, launching his spear and yelling for the idiot to disappear. But oh man, here we go. Nagi starts moving, thinking that this decision to become a porter was never something he actually chose. He reaches toward his own side to pull something out, but stops mid-motion while blocking the spear. Q-Tip's confused and Nagi charges in straight to land a clean punch to the mouth. Bearded guy's thrown off too and tries to swing in return, but Nagi pulls out a little axe and hurls it spinning, hits him square in the chest. The other two are just standing there, completely stunned. The blonde one has no idea what's happening. Q-Tip had passed out in a split second. Right away, the blonde guy snaps, saying that pathetic scumbag couldn't even beat a kid like that. Two more rush in, but Nagi pulls out some kind of water device and blasts it at them. It's boiling water. He charges in through the steam and delivers a strike. Still, he hasn't killed anyone. He's actually going easy on them, just dishing out punches to the face, the stomach, the chest. The idiots are all face planted against the wall while the blonde guy is still standing there, totally lost. How the hell did this kid take down 3 adventurers just like that? He starts yelling that it's impossible. Nagi's ranked white. How could he pull something like this off? But Nagi's got things in that backpack. Then he glances over his shoulder and says not to worry about it. He's just the group's porter, after all. Naturally, not long after, everyone's tied up outside, beaten to a pulp. Nagi notices a carriage pulling up. He raises his hand and says they're right over here. Something good's stepping out of that carriage. And honestly, he's hoping it's not a dude. He's betting on those thighs. Turns out it's Dungeon Inspector Petra, who says she heard what happened. But why is everyone so bruised and swollen? Everyone got wrecked. She asks what happened and Nagi goes, ask them. They'll explain everything. Actually, he had used his bag earlier to secretly record what they'd said about killing the porter, and now it's playing everything back. Petra finds it fascinating that he had a recording device hidden inside the bag. She says he's definitely a unique kid. He explains that it's not exactly a recorder. It's more like storing sound itself inside the backpack. She says whatever, the point is she gets it. Those guys betrayed him and tried to kill him. What she doesn't understand is how he, a mere porter, managed to defeat 4 adventurers. On top of that, they look like they've been poisoned with ashwood mushrooms. Nagi says he's impressed she knows about those. She responds, of course she knows. Those mushrooms make your muscles lock up, make you dizzy, and turn your face purple. Nagi says it's easy to explain. Coincidentally, they ended up eating a soup that had those mushrooms in it. And right when they tried to attack him, the symptoms kicked in. He just got lucky. Otherwise, how could someone like him have possibly won? He steps over to the blonde guy and asks if that's not the truth. The blonde guy's trembling all over. But obviously, that's a total lie. We saw him beat them down. Sure ate the mushrooms, but it wasn't on purpose. Long before they even started fighting seriously, they were already caught in this kid's trap. Then Nagi asks if they're really supposed to be gold-ranked adventurers. And bam, clash of swords with the blonde guy. They start going at it. Slash here. Counter there, Nagi ducks low. The blonde one noticed something was off. Even if they burned all their energy on the boss fight, it still did make sense that they were getting completely wrecked by this backpack kid. But Nagi just laughs, wondering how the guy even managed to kill a goblin being that slow. The blonde guy's sure he's losing because he's being humiliated, and that mockery is throwing him off completely. There's no way he was gonna lose to this backpack kid. Not a chance, he just had to calm down and finish him off now. But after one more swing, he misses again, muttering that maybe next time he'll land a hit. Another mistake. And now he's saying, maybe next time. He powers up his sword with a golden aura and fires off a blast. But Nagi just hops up and laughs midair, saying he's getting better. That just pisses the guy off even more. He tries another upward slash, but now Nagi's already beneath him. That's when he starts to get it. He didn't lose to this kid because Nagi was stronger. He lost because he himself had gotten weaker. The blonde guy starts wondering what's happening to his body. He's overwhelmed by this strange, sick feeling like he's about to throw up. Nagi casually asks if he didn't give them a heads up already. Forgot to mention, they were all poisoned. That tasty meat they loved so much during the meal. Yeah, it already had the toxic mushrooms mixed in. Not only do those mushrooms make food taste amazing, but they're also great for dealing with people who like to cheat their way out of paying. Blondie hears that and groans, calling him a damn bastard. Says he was betrayed before he even did anything. Nagi nods and says, yep, that's exactly right. I mean, how's a delicate porter like him supposed to trust shady adventurers like them? Once they'd eaten the mushrooms, all they needed was to smell a catalyst for the effects to kick in. Nagi's plan was if everything went smoothly, he'd hand over the antidote and no one would even get sick. But no, these geniuses decided to make the worst possible move and shatter his bottle. Now he's holding the last bottle and wondering out loud what he's supposed to do with it. The blonde guy knows it, no matter how it went down, even if they claim they were poisoned and betrayed, the story would make sense to anyone. And crying, he just says he's telling the truth. They went into that place, ate something wrong, and that's why they're like this. No way in hell he's going to admit he got beat down by the backpack kid. That would be an even bigger humiliation than just looking like a fool. Petra's there, staring at the four of them crying, completely confused. Then she calls over a guard and tells him to take these criminals away. Meanwhile, Nagi goes, farewell, my friends, I'm heading out, my work here is done. But Petra calls out for him to wait. She asks if he'd like a ride back to the city. He glances over his shoulder and asks, is it free? Cut to them already in the carriage. She says it's a shame. He went through such a mess right after arriving in the city. On behalf of the entire Hunters Association, she wants to apologize. He tells her not to worry. Adventurers and porters like him are used to stuff like this. She says she gets it, but there are still things he should be more careful about. She knows he wasn't the one at fault this time, but not everyone's going to see it that way. Especially since the adventurers he took down were from the Dawn Guild. They're notorious for being arrogant and ignoring the rules. And even if Nagi wasn't in the wrong here, those guys are definitely going to want payback. So all she asks is that he be more cautious from now on. But mid-conversation, she starts looking confused because all of a sudden, something's eating Nagi from inside his own backpack. He calmly says he hears it and asks the creature to stop. Whatever it is, spits him back out. Our boy sighs and tells Gluttony to quit popping out in front of people and get back in the bag. The creature whines that it's starving and Petra's like, what the hell is that thing? Nagi tells her not to worry. That's Gluttony, a creature that's been living inside the backpack. Who knows how long? He's the one who organizes everything in there. Before Gluttony showed up, things were a mess. Swords tangled together, ropes all knotted up. In exchange for keeping it all tidy, the little monster eats the stones Nagi earns. And considering how crazy today's been, that thing's probably got a whole lot of organizing to do. At the same time, on the other hand, Gluttony had a lot to eat, since everything from that dungeon, which was supposed to be split among 4 adventurers, ended up going straight into Nagi's backpack. Nagi tells Gluttony to go ahead and eat twice the usual amount of mana stones if he wants. All cute and happy, the little creature grabs one and starts munching. Petra finds it odd. She's never heard of a magical being that eats mana stones. Nagi says it's the first time he's seen one too, but there's no need to worry. It's just a little guy who likes fair trade. She says, you're kind of fascinating, or rather, that backpack of yours is definitely something else. I've never seen anything like it. But before she can finish her sentence, the horse suddenly bucks and the carriage starts shaking. She asks what's wrong, and the soldier says he has no idea. The beast just won't calm down. Out of nowhere, Nagi feels something weird. His expression shifts, serious. A strange sensation, one he had no doubt about. A dungeon break. But why was it happening here, of all places? He immediately calls out to the inspector and points in a direction, saying there's a dungeon over there that's about to break. She looks shaken. It's a massive problem. But how the hell did he know that? Did he have some kind of detection tool hidden away too? He replies that it's just instinct. She doesn't buy it. But he tells her they don't have time for her to believe or not believe. They need to move, warn the others before things spiral and casualties pile up. Even so, Petra is still turning it over in her head, sensing a dungeon break by instinct alone. That was absurd. Even she, a highly respected inspector, couldn't do that. Gluttony lets out a little burp and casually confirms it's a dungeon break. Says he loves eating magic stones and can smell one coming from miles away. More importantly, he's picking up an extremely strong scent coming from beyond that mountain. So yeah, he's absolutely sure. I thought they were gonna run away, but nope, they're heading over to check it out. A dungeon break is something that happens when a dungeon remains open for too long. When no one clears it, it eventually goes through a catastrophic shift, basically your classic solo leveling copy. Petra confirms it really is a dungeon break, and worse, it's already past the critical point. Any minute now, monsters are going to start pouring out. But again, how the hell did Nagi feel that from so far away? He answers that it's a feeling he'll never forget. Not only can he forget it, he doesn't want to forget it. He remembers exactly how terrifying it is when something like that happens. You've got pterodactyls flying around, 6-armed demon things crawling out. What even is he? Some kind of guy from the future? Or from the underworld? Petra is still trying to piece it together. When did this kid ever go through something like that? And she keeps wondering how she didn't sense anything herself. Nagi says something's not right here. If this dungeon is so close to the city, why didn't any adventurers show up to subjugate it? Petra checks the registry and says that this dungeon had already been assigned to someone a long time ago. Naturally, Nagi wants to know who accepted it and never came. She replies that this place was marked as a rank D dungeon, and it was accepted by mithril-ranked adventurers, so it should have been taken care of by now. The moment Nagi hears that, suspicion starts building. He says he's going to need to find out what's going on in the city and asks what she's planning to do. Petra tells the guard to take the little criminals to jail and says she'll help the kid. So they head for the city. Not long after, they arrive and come face to face with a huge crowd yelling in the streets. Clearly, something weird was going on. The townspeople are shouting that the dungeon's been there for ages and no one's done a thing about it. If a dungeon break happens, why is everyone dragging their feet? One guy is sitting around totally unbothered. Then there's Miro, a martial artist, who says they should be talking to the guild leader, not to them. The other guy sitting there, Vendeshtar, coldly says to pass the message along. This isn't their responsibility. The townspeople are furious, calling them bastards. And nearby, Nagi's now absolutely sure his suspicions were right. The name for this kind of thing is Dungeon No-Show. Though honestly, not everything needs a name, author. Basically, someone buys the rights to a dungeon and then never shows up. It happens when a high-ranked adventurer has nothing better to do and takes a weak dungeon. But then a better one appears, and they abandon the first. Petra says that, yeah, that does happen sometimes. But in those cases, the association issues a fine. Nagi, however, points out that for a mithril-ranked adventurer swimming in cash, a fine is just pocket change. And even if that guy gets off scot-free, the people in this town lose everything. That dungeon's probably going to break tonight. And even if they call every squad from the association, barely any will make it in time. And the worst part, watching those other two adventurers standing there making lame excuses. That guy Deshtar is going on about how they're victims too. If their leader doesn't show up, how are they supposed to handle anything? People should stop blaming them and take it up with the association. Watching this unfold, Nagi can't help but think, adventurers are supposed to be heroes. But in the end, they're just selfish people chasing profit. The real problem is, in situations like this, their power is what's needed. Only they have the strength to stop something like this. Nagi can't fix it just being a simple porter. Wait, so is he weak or strong now? I'm confused. Did he really only win because of the mushrooms? What's going on? Petra says the best thing they can do is evacuate the village. Saving lives has to come first. But Nagi grabs his necklace and asks if she really thinks they'll be able to save anyone. She tells him to explain, and he does. Winter is coming. And with it, here comes Jon Snow and the Iron Throne. Once everyone loses their homes, how are they supposed to survive? He throws the necklace aside and says it's hopeless. What this village needs right now isn't a porter. Wait, did his badge just change? He shouts out for them to take a good look at what's happening here. A dungeon break unfolding right in the village he happened to visit. Then he turns to Petra and asks, is it true that whoever stops a dungeon break gets to keep all the rewards tax-free? She confirms it, and he replies that this is the perfect chance to make some serious money. The two adventurers are looking around, confused, wondering who this nutcase is, and if he's actually planning to challenge the dungeon. But then their expressions change the moment they see he's wearing a gold rank adventurer badge. Ah, right, they're thinking he probably stole it from that chump earlier. Nagi then asks if they want in. If so, the split is 9 for him and 1 for the losers. Just like that, it's finally time. Time for him to be an adventurer. Also, just now realizing, these chapter lengths are insane, guys. I'm still on chapter 2. What is this? Anyway, the story takes a second to explain what rift dungeons are. They serve as gateways connecting Earth to unknown worlds. To enter one of these, it's recommended to be at least gold rank. The difficulty isn't just about the monsters. Obviously, you'll have to fight strong ones. That's expected. But one of the major problems is that it's nearly impossible to gauge how dangerous these dungeons are from the outside. The wind conditions can be totally unpredictable. That's why most adventurers avoid these like the plague, way too risky. But the 4 of them, they're going in for a speedrun. Petra says she checked the magic field, and it looks like the dungeon will break in about an hour. Nagi already knows. That's how long he has to clear everything. All they can hope is that it's an easy dungeon. No more talking, they can't afford to waste a single second. It's time to go in. A golden flash of light bursts out, and when they open their eyes, they're in a completely different world. Chunks of floating rock everywhere. Nero is all hyped up, saying it was Meg time just a second ago, and now they're in some new place where it's bright as day. And oh my god, that Vendeshtar dude is they're saying today's finally the day he conquers his very first dungeon. This guy's insane, throwing himself into this as his first real experience. No way. He's claiming he's about to unleash such incredible power that everyone's gonna be left speechless. Petra just mutters that they're screwed and Magi agrees. Guys, this looks like that Steam game. Go up. They're gonna have to keep climbing all the way up to that little castle at the top. And the worst part, they only got 1 hour to finish it. Petra wants to know why he lied about being a gold rank adventurer. Magi replies that they don't really have time to explain, they just need to get this started now. If he'd shown up offering help as just a porter, those two would never have agreed to join in. But now, with the gold badge, he's not only got them following him, he's got them listening to him. Petra agrees. In the end, what matters most is saving the citizens. Meanwhile, Nero just giggles and tells them to stop worrying. Humans are slow and useless anyway, but she'll reach the top alone and fast. She's already hopping from rock to rock like she's on a trampoline. Destro is standing there, confused and impressed, but he notes something feels kinda dangerous. Suddenly, a glowing bracelet appears around her wrist, and she gets yanked back to the ground. The guy tells her to use her brain. She needs to think before charging ahead like an idiot. The tall girl tells him to stop picking fights, while the rest of them are already bickering again. Petra steps in and tells everyone to calm down. In a dungeon like this, it's normal to check for curses first. She activates her magic, and they all see chains connecting the 4 of them. Is this not literally a Steam game, or am I losing it? Anyway, the important part, all 4 of them have to make it to the top. No one can go sprinting off alone. Nagi comments that flashy tricks won't work in this place. But it's fine, because if there's one thing he's got, it's climbing gear. One of them looks confused, wondering why he's so prepared for this kind of thing. He just says they should get started already, they'd only have an hour. One step at a time is the key to clearing this kind of dungeon. You can't waste all your energy trying to reach the top too fast. But at the same time, if you're too slow, you'll run out of time. He keeps leaping from one floating rock to the next, telling everyone to stay in rhythm with him. They all have to keep the chain connection in mind and maintain the minimum required distance. Nero says he's way too slow and that she's going ahead on her own. But he explains if you just dash forward, take a dumb path, and end up having to double back, you're gonna lose time. They need to move slowly and stick to the correct route, because this is a one-way trip. The idea is simple. Follow the most precise path. The problem is that this type of dungeon is full of variables. Right in front of him is some flying creature that looks like a hippo eating a boulder. The thing chomps through the very route he had calculated. Naji never imagined something like this would even exist. Petra explains that it's a flying stone-eating pig. The good news, it's not aggressive. Just don't provoke it and it'll leave you alone. The bad news, it's eating the floating rocks, which happen to be the only path they can use. Still, she's impressed, saying the ecosystem in this place is incredible. The creature eats rock, poots rock, and ends up creating new paths. But for Naji, this is a disaster. The route he planned out is now gone. He says he's got an idea. He wants to throw something to trap the creature. The problem is, if he misses, he might accidentally provoke it and turn it into an aggressive monster. Deshtar tells him to chill. If the creature charges at them, he'll handle it. He says it's finally his time to shine. He stretches out his arm and tells everyone to watch closely. He's about to show them what he can do. That's how Vendeshtar overcame any challenge. He used a necromancy talent called Finger Summon, and a bunch of clay golems started appearing all around him. Naji actually compliments him, saying it might just work. But then he notices the golems are already cracking apart, and asks why they're falling apart so fast. Nero chimes in, Deshtar is kind of famous back in the beginner zones. Nobody trusts anything he summons. Most of the time, they either don't work or explode. Not to mention, the guy always ends up passing out and drooling like a fool. But the guy insists, he says he can maintain these incredible creations for 5 minutes, and that should be enough. Nagi's thinking this is probably not a good idea, but he doesn't have time to plan something else. So that's it. They're going for it before everything blows up. He throws the harpoon, and one of Deshtar's creatures jumps to grab it. But instead, it smacks the flying pig right in the face. Apparently, there's a sensory connection between the summoner and the summoned because Deshtar flinches and groans in pain. Now that they're crossing the rope, Magi thinks to himself that while this place is tough and weird, they actually got lucky. His companion's skills are useful, and the fact that he's got all kinds of gear in his backpack as always makes things a lot easier. That is until Deshtar suddenly tells everyone to hurry, the golems are falling apart. He's not sure why, but everything feels like it's about to explode. He's losing control and being suspended mid-air by a rope is not helping. Sure enough, the golems start blowing up. One of the blasts lands directly on the pig monster, which lets out a roar of pain. The rope they were relying on, yeah, it snaps. Everyone's falling, and they all know they're screwed. There's no way they're getting out of this alive. Nagi shouts at them to grab onto whatever they can, thinking even if they survive the fall, there won't be enough time to reach the top anymore. At the very least, he needs to soften the landing. And of course, to fix it, he whips something out of the backpack. Turns out it's actually a pretty simple solution. They land on a big stone, using the backpack not just as padding, but as a trampoline to bounce back up. He uses a grappling hook, and everyone manages to grab onto a higher rock. Petra thanks him, saying they're all safe thanks to him. But now they've lost a lot of progress. Can they really make it to the top in time? Nagi says there's no other choice. From this point on, they can't rely on their abilities anymore. Everyone needs to get ready. They're going straight up vertical style. He hands out frog-style climbing gear to everyone, while repeating the same thing over and over. If one person falls, they all fail, so they better stay sharp. They dodge falling rocks, pass through a freezing region, run from a monkey's banana, and even bump into a Pokemon. They're totally exhausted now, asking how much farther they have to go. Nagi says they're almost there, but they snap back saying he's already said that 10 times. Nero complains, I became an adventurer to fight monsters, not climb a mountain. Nagi tells her to shut it and just look up. The castle is right there. The bad news, there's clearly a boss guarding it too. But the two were actually excited, finally happy they got something to kill. If they take that thing down, maybe Nero will finally get promoted out of bronze rank. Nagi says now it all makes sense. Based on their physical abilities and talents, there's no way these two should still be bronze. Destra's probably still stuck there because nobody likes necromancers, and Nero is from a race that was enslaved until recently. They're all pumped now, fully confident that their gold rank teammate is gonna take care of it. But Petra speaks up, telling everyone to calm down. She says there's something strange going on. That boss up there? It looks like the Serpenter dragon, but normally those creatures aren't purple. The only time their scales ever turn that color is when they're already dead. Nagi looks surprised. We see a sword stuck in the ground and a guy stretching like he just woke up from a nap. He had already killed the dragon, and now he's looking around asking what all the fuss is about. Then he glances back and spots Nagi approaching. At that exact moment, Nagi feels a murderous intent. Before anyone can react, the guy rockets toward the group. In a split second, he's standing face to face with Nagi. That's when Nagi notices the emblem on his chest. Mithril rank. It hits him immediately. This was even worse than someone just accepting a dungeon and not showing up. The newcomer says this is a big problem. He figured no one would come in here and casually informs them that this dungeon is supposed to break. Nagi remembers there are people in this world who deliberately make things worse on purpose. The guy clenches his fists and says it's a shame, but the 4 of them died trying to clear a dungeon heroically. The next chapter opens up explaining how this world has dungeons and rankings. At the bottom of the pile are the poor souls born with white rank talents. Usually, they're the ones stuck mining or picking up leftovers. Step 2 is becoming a bronze adventurer. Normally useless folks like that blonde kid all talk and barely kills anything. Obviously, on the other hand, even someone ranked bronze is still way stronger than a regular human. Then you've got the silver rank folks. Those ones start to show some real skill. Most of them can handle normal dungeons just fine. Next up are the gold rank adventurers. People at that level are usually captains with their own dungeon parties. Those are the standard ranks. But then there's a rare class, an elite few that almost nobody gets to see. These are the mithril rank adventurers. People refer to them as something beyond human. Their power level is so ridiculous, it's hard to even comprehend. And now one of them is standing right in front of Nagi, who knows he's completely screwed. Just from the guy's aura, it's obvious. Even if the 4 of them attacked together, they wouldn't stand a chance. Nagi quietly asks Petra if she knows who this is. She says of course she does. There are only a handful of mithril adventurers in the world. She knows exactly who this arrogant jerk from the Dow Guild is. He's the captain of a vanguard squad known as Berserker Durican. Durican says now he recognizes her. She's the girl from the association, then asks what she's doing down here pretending to be an adventurer, especially considering she's white rank. But Petra fires back, she's the one who wants answers. Why is he here? She steps right up, bold as ever, and asks why the hell he didn't clear the dungeon if he already reserved it. Preventing a dungeon break was his responsibility, so why wasn't he doing anything? Durican just laughs and asks what responsibility she's talking about. Adventurers do what they want, for their own benefit, and sometimes letting a dungeon break brings more profit than clearing it. Nagi's standing there thinking, I already knew adventurers weren't heroes, but I didn't expect to meet garbage like this guy. If Durican really wants to cause a dungeon break, then Nagi has to stop him. The problem is, he's mithril. Fighting him head-on would be suicide. So for now, the plan's different. Suddenly, Nagi shifts his tone and acts all friendly, saying that the great mithril rank Durican must be misunderstanding the situation. They were just passionate adventurers who happened to stumble into this dungeon by chance. They have no intention of interfering. In fact, here, this little skewer is their way of apologizing. He knows hanging out in a dungeon like this must make a guy hungry. Nagi's fully aware that he has no chance in a straight fight, so first, he's going to weaken him. Durican accepts immediately, starts eating and says it's amazing. Really, the flavor is fantastic. Then he smirks, calling the kid an idiot for thinking a cheap trick like this would actually work. And bam, he swings, saying this is his way of saying thanks for the meal. Nagi manages to block it, but he gets launched way off into the distance. The only problem, he's still chained to Nero, which means she's about to get dragged along with him. She braces herself while Naji is flying through the air, but before she can pull him back, Durakan scoffs, saying it's hilarious how amateur they are, can't even break the link between them. He charges in, declaring that this will be their final resting place in this world. But Destro steps in, shouting that he's not going to let him lay a finger on Nero. There's an explosion in the middle of the island, and when the smoke clears, Durakan looks stunned. What even is that weird creature Destro just summoned that managed to block a punch? Destro doesn't flinch. He simply asks if Durakan isn't the one who invited them to this place but then didn't show up. Durakan replies that yeah, he sent the invitation, but he didn't think anyone would be dumb enough to actually come to something like this. Still, the two of them fit the setup perfectly. A necromancer and a beastkin girl. Just ideal. Destro tells Nero not to worry. Once their leader comes back, it'll be 3 against 1, and they might stand a chance. For now, they just need to buy time. His golem might not pack much of a punch, but it can hold out. He just has to push forward and fight like he did in training. Dude, they're really going at it, huh? And this Mithro-ranked guy, he's having a harder time than expected. On the island below, Naji's knocked out cold. Petra is right beside him, checking if he's okay. She tells him she already performed some emergency treatment, and he thanks her. But the situation up there, not good at all. Honestly, I'm still shocked Nero, and Deshtar are holding out. Weren't Mithro-rank adventurers supposed to be godlike? I thought he'd land a single hit, and they'd be done. Nero's flipping around like crazy. Durakan swings at her, but she dodges at the last second. The golem jumps in to block the attack. He grabs the golem by what looks like hair, even though it doesn't have any, and slams it into both of them. Down below, Nagi's awake now, and he admits it. He made a mistake. He should have realized that kind of poison wouldn't work on someone Mithro-ranked. He asks Petra for more intel on the guy. He's Mithril, so there's gotta be something. She explains he's considered unmatched in close quarters combat. On top of that, his dungeon clear records are insane. He's notorious for picking fights with other adventurers and always winning. He's also a master of the greatsword. Once he split an orc clean in half with a single swing. Naji yells at her. He asks for weaknesses, not Durakan's greatest hits. But Petra ignores him and says the bigger problem is time. Even if they could beat him somehow, they're running out of it. The end of the dungeon is just ahead, but they're not going to make it. If it weren't for that damn curse wrapped around their arms, maybe they could have escaped or done something about it. That's when Naji has an idea. They've been treating the curse as a handicap, since if one of them falls, they all fall. But the reverse is also true. If one of them reaches the top, they all do. It was time to turn this curse into a weapon. Not only could they take down this mithril bastard, they could finish the whole dungeon in one move. He starts going over his cards, thinking about all of his teammates' abilities, everything they can do. Individually, none of them is impressive. But if he combines everything they've got, maybe there's a way. He turns to Petra and asks if, using her scouting talent, she can get a read on the terrain at the top. She says that from this distance, easy. She can generate a full map. He tells her to do it fast. She pulls out a quill, and in seconds, the map's complete. Naji looks it over and says the detail is beyond what he expected. Funny how they're down here planning like this, right? Meanwhile, how's that fight up top going? Petra glances over and says, I finished the map, but how exactly do you plan to use it? Nagi answers that the map's gonna be used to take down that beast. This fight wasn't between humans. It was between a human and a beast. I'm not even sure where he's going with this, but let's see. He says it's common for adventurers exploring dungeons to run into monsters way stronger than they are. Petra says maybe they deal with it using experience or strategy, but Nagi shakes his head. Nope, she doesn't get how things really work. Real adventurers win through trickery. 2-on-1s, throwing bombs, laying traps, attacking from behind. To take down a beast, you gotta fight dirty. And with that, he launches himself into the air and fires a shot from a crossbow. Durakan senses it instantly, snatches the bolt midair and scoffs, saying a sneaky attack like that was never gonna work on him. But right at the tip of the bolt, there's a strange goo. It starts swirling, and before Durakan realizes it, he's stuck to the ground. He grumbles that the stuff is disgusting and starts trying to break free. Meanwhile, Naji's flying in at full speed, hand digging into the backpack. The grin on his face says it all. He's coming in for a head-on confrontation. Finally, he's actually feeling fired up, until he throws out his hands and just launches a bunch of mushrooms at him. It's like a smoke bomb. All at once, a huge cloud erupts around them. Durakan's standing there in the haze, trying to figure out how Naji covered the whole area like that. Within the smoke, we find Deshtar. He's wrecked. Naji asks if he's okay, and the guy groans, obviously not. His fingers are all broken. He can't summon golems properly anymore. Each finger corresponds to a golem, and he needs them intact to summon. It's kind of like that old manga Maruhan where the dude's friend would always break his fingers to. Nagi turns to them and tells them to listen closely. There is a way they can turn this whole thing around. Back inside the smoke, Durakan finally breaks free from the sticky web. He mutters that Nagi's annoyingly persistent. They probably fled with their group to another island, but all this effort is pointless. Then he sees something walking nearby, a figure with a giant backpack. Whatever it is, it's talking. Durakan is certain it's Nagi and mutters how pathetic he is, What's the point of all that smoke if you're just gonna talk and give away your position? He rushes in, hand glowing with power, unleashes a devastating punch. Boom, direct hit. But then his expression changes. His hand just went straight through a golem. He stares confused. Why was the golem talking? That's when he realizes the voice wasn't coming from the golem, it was coming from the backpack. So, where's the real group? Nagi's way in the back, holding onto a rope. Durakan spots it, leading up to the island above, and mutters that it was a decent plan to distract him. Not bad, really. But now that he's caught on, he says there's no way for Nagi to escape. Nagi responds, "You sure about that?" Then shouts for Deshtar to go ahead and launch it. They're running out of time. Deshtar hesitates, saying he's never done something like this from so far away. His fingers broken and tied to the rope, Nagi shot up to the higher platform. At the end of the rope is a little finger stump. It suddenly glows and boom, turns into a giant bear golem. It lands on the top island, wraps the rope around its shoulders, and starts hauling everyone upward. But it doesn't stop there. It rushes straight at the dragon, latching onto one of its scales. And yeah, it also blows up the entire island in the process. Meanwhile, Durakan's panicking. He doesn't understand why he can't move. Then he notices the golem's legs were buried and pinned to the ground by a mass of cords. He tries to shove the golem off him, but Deshtar speaks up, saying it's not gonna be that easy. That golem thumb may be the slowest of all, when it's also the heaviest and most durable. As they're all being pulled upward, Nagi says again, this was never a fight between humans. It was a fight between a human and a beast. The island above is cracking apart, everything coming down. And Nagi admits, yes, there are beasts that can't be defeated. But defeating Durakan, that was never the goal. The dragon keeps falling, jaws wide open, heading straight for Durakan. At the same time, Nagi yanks the backpack and the golem tears the ground apart. The creature's still clinging to the scale, but the rope's starting to fray. As Durakan gets dragged down below, Nagi and the rest are pulled upward by the rope. He shouts down to Durakan, saying he better climb fast, because the road ahead just got a whole lot longer. And just like that, they're all scrambling up top. Nagi's smiling, pumped up, saying the fight's about to be over. He thanks Nero because if it weren't for her, none of it would have worked. She was the only one strong enough to throw the rope all the way from the lower island up to the higher one. She's all slouched over in chibi mode, saying it was nothing. Deshtar, on the other hand, is jealous. He mutters that it wasn't a big deal at all. Anyone with enough strength could have done it. Even an idiot could have pulled that off. Doesn't matter what anyone says, the real MVP of this dungeon was definitely him. His little golem not only secured the rope up top, but also brought down that berserker. Maybe he's already better than a mithril-ranked adventurer. Petro, watching the two, comments that at least they're enthusiastic. Nagi responds that this is what it feels like to clear your first dungeon. Man, if it were me, I'd already be bragging all over the place. First dungeon, and it turns into this huge mess. Come on, I just wanted to kill a few goblins and level up in peace. He goes on to say that the satisfaction of finishing a dungeon doesn't come from one person's incredible skill, but from everyone working together for the win. He also makes sure to praise Petra, saying she was essential too. He'd heard that inspectors had some kind of scouting ability, but he always thought it was something basic. When he asked for a map, he never imagined she'd create a perfect replica in just 1 second. It was only thanks to that he could plan everything down to the explosion. He's sure even professional scouts would be impressed. Smooth talker, got everyone blushing, and Petra, in her head, is thinking that for all the praise he's giving everyone else, the most impressive one is still him. To come up with a plan like that on the fly, there's no way he's just a simple porter. How could someone with that much talent be stuck in such a low-tier job? But then again, the kid was born with a backpack talent, and the world didn't exactly do him any favors. Deshtar wants to know what's going to happen to that berserker. Everyone agrees, at the very least, he should be locked up for the rest of his life. But Petra isn't so sure. As serious as his crimes were, he's still a mithril-ranked adventurer, and the stronger an adventurer gets, the more above the law they become. Someone at that level is practically protected on a national scale. Most likely, he'll just pay a fine and that'll be it. Seems like everything bad that happens in dungeons just gets solved with a fine. Deshtar grumbles that he doesn't care. If that guy doesn't get punished by the law, he'll find him outside and beat the crap out of him himself. Nagi quickly tells him to let go of that dangerous idea. What they saw Durakan do earlier was only a small fraction of his real power. He points to the creatures around them. Those are the corpses of the Nose tribe, the ones who used to guard the fortress entrance. That guy cleared the whole area by himself. Nero and Deshtar are still fired up, insisting that they could have handled it too. Nagi says he already knows they're confident, but tells them to look more closely at the bodies. The cuts are all at the exact same height, which proves the guy likely killed them all with one single strike. The truth is, an adventurer's strength shines depending on the weapon they've mastered. And they need to remember, when they were fighting Durakan, he didn't use his greatsword. He didn't use any talents either. He was fighting them with nothing but brute strength, nothing else. Deshtar pauses and says now it all makes sense. Everything happened because the moment that guy saw them, he charged in, leaving his sword still stuck in the boss. As soon as he hears that, Nagi stops for a second. If that guy fell along with the boss's body, then yeah, that means he's down there now with his sword in hand. The bastard's smiling, and that's when the real fight begins. A slash comes tearing up from below, and Naji shouts for everyone to watch out. Oh boy, looks like the attack is gonna nail Deshtar straight on. Man, the guy launched some massive strike from down there, sliced right through the platform. But the hell? Why do I have to open my big mouth too? Naji says the guy felt way too strong to be mithril. Now everyone's hanging off the edge of the little island, trying not to fall. Naji checks in, asking if everyone's okay, but after just one hit, they're all scraped up and wrecked. Nero's slumped over like a ragdoll, and the worst part, Deshtar's passed out and he lost his necromancer arm. But honestly, the most terrifying thing wasn't even the attack. It was looking over and seeing Durakan, already almost right there, closing the distance with bloodlust in his eyes. Nagi knows he'll be at their side any second now. At best, it got 3 minutes left to finish this. But if there's one thing Naji is confident in, it's carrying stuff. If there's one thing in this life he knows how to do, it's that. The only difference this time is, what he's carrying is a bit heavier. He closes his eyes, grabs hold, and starts pulling everyone. He's climbing, dragging 3 bodies with him, and the clock is ticking. Durakan's getting closer and closer, smiling like a madman. The hourglass is nearly empty when Nagi finally reaches the top, hauling everyone with him. The last grains of sand fall, just as Durakan jumps to the final level. He's grinning as Naji clutches Deshtar in his arms. Those endless grains of sand, man. The gate's right there, glowing bright. They rush into the exit and come face to face with the crystal, the dungeon's core. Break that, and it's over. Nagi reaches into the backpack, pulls out a sword, and hurls it, spinning straight toward the core. But just before it hits, boom, something crashes down from above. Of course it's Durakan. Nagi sees him drop right in front of the crystal, swatting the sword aside, now face to face with it. He calmly says, "Time's up." Damn it. And yeah, it explodes right at that moment. Outside, the dungeon break begins. There's an old man praying at the portal. Buddy, you better run unless you've got a death wish. He's looking around, asking if God has abandoned them. And seriously, this dungeon break feels kinda unfair, doesn't it? They took out the monsters inside, so why are all these beasts pouring out now? A whole swarm charges out. Even the boss shows up. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but at least Nagi's group ends up face to face with the monsters. The only problem? In a dungeon break, the number of creatures that spawn is endless. Durakan grabs Nagi by the neck and asks, "Isn't it magnificent?" The sight of a dungeon breaking, it impresses him every time. Nagi takes that to mean this guy has caused others before. And Durakan just confirms it, says it's obvious. But someone as weak as Nagi could never understand. When a dungeon breaks, it usually regenerates into something far more powerful. Meaning, the rewards inside also increase drastically. Right then, Nagi understands why he did it. And he starts to wonder, did he truly not care about the villagers? The bastard says, of course not. Adventurers live for one thing only, greater rewards. Whatever happens to weaklings like Nagi doesn't matter to him. And in that moment, Nagi can't help but feel how familiar this all is. Adventurers weren't heroes. They weren't saviors. In the end, they were just selfish people. And he hated people like that. He'd seen it too many times, the destruction that adventurers with power and malice tend to bring. But when he spots a giant bird soaring overhead, he says that, on the other hand, as rare as it is, there are still those out there with great power and virtue. On top of the massive bird stands a girl, one of the fierce ones, no doubt. She calls out that she's ready, confirms the target, and then dives off in this dramatic, almost theatrical fall. She lands with purpose, announcing that she's going to wipe everything out before the rift spreads any further. Her first move is a slash using the talent of a magical swordswoman, igniting a blazing trail of fire right across the boss's back. The gnolls are already panicking, scrambling to escape as they're swallowed up by a storm of flames. Durakan and Petra both watch with stunned expressions, and that's when the real powerhouse arrives. She introduces herself as Agnitha Farija, vice captain of the Twilight Wind, and without missing a beat, she demands that they start explaining what exactly happened here. Next chapter, all those beasts are going up in flames and Nagi's completely wiped out. Petra asks if he's okay, and he says yeah, but still tells her to take a look. The dungeon rift was already starting to close. Durakan wasn't happy about that at all. Even if it was a low-level dungeon, how the hell did she manage to end it all with just one strike? It was seriously impressive. Then he straight up calls her out like, "Hey girl, I know your guild's broke, so what are you even doing here? Weren't you all inactive for 3 years?" But Admissa just answers cool as ever, saying she knows full well that based on the scene, he's the one who caused it, and there's no time for explanations. There's no way a mithril rank adventurer would have failed like that, so he must have done it on purpose. Durakan just wants to know if she's really trying to start a fight, but even though he's acting all confident, inside he's panicking, thinking she's one of those people he always wanted to face off against at least once, just not like this. That slash that split the island in two left him drained. Plus, his master had given strict orders not to stir up trouble, and on top of that, he'd already achieved the main goal, so there's really no reason to fight. He throws the sword over his shoulder and starts walking away. Agnissa asks if the loser's really gonna run off, but he tells her not to get the wrong idea. He's a smart adventurer. He knows that in this situation, victory isn't guaranteed. He already got what he came for, so he's leaving. But Nero calls him out, telling him to stop lying. Everyone knows he wasn't just trying to trigger a dungeon break. He was hiding something, especially after trying to kill him. But the bastard pulls out the lamest excuse ever, saying there must have been some curse in the dungeon that made people not in his party look like enemies, that attacking their team was never the intention. He just thought they were monsters. If they wanted to check it out, they could go back in and see for themselves. It's just a shame the dungeon already closed, right guys? Since there's no one to verify anything, well, that's the story the association's gonna hear. The poor group just slams their fists on the ground. If this goes to court, the jury's definitely gonna side with the guy who's ranked mithril. Wide hips Petra knows that telling the truth won't help at all. In the end, they'll come out as the losers, and Durican just walks off waving goodbye. The four of them stand there seething, staring him down in rage, while Naji tries to calm things down, saying, well, at least we stopped the dungeon break. But suddenly, he drops to his knees. The guy's completely drained. The Queen of Twilight glances back and sees the kid knocked out, his hand all messed up. She quickly tells them to throw him onto Aeginon, the bird, because she'll take him for treatment. And with that, this chaotic dungeon came to an end. At least the village was left untouched. Not long after, folks from the association showed up bringing treasure chests and apologizing for everything that happened. They swore they were working hard to make sure it never happens again, but obviously, that's just talk. Thanks to Agnes's help, Nagi was taken to the eastern city of Bellum, and in this abandoned shack that looked like a knockoff version of the Black Clover hideout from Walmart. Yeah, that was actually Agnes's base. Nagi wakes up there. Man, doesn't he look like a girl with that long, soft hair? Petra's sitting next to him. He gets up all groggy, not knowing where he is. He calls out for the inspector, and she jumps up right away, already asking how he's feeling. The rest of the crew's all there too, clinging to him, grabbing his face, saying they thought he was dead, but he just wants to know where he is. The last thing he remembers is seeing that berserk guy running away. They tell him, this is the Twilight Crew's base. Agnes had even hired a priestess to heal him. Nagi says now it all makes sense. That's why he's not feeling any pain, and everyone else looks fine too. They reply that it's nothing big for first-rank adventurers. But come on, this was their very first adventure. Destra then says that, yeah, for a first time, that was one hell of a journey. But when he saw how happy the villagers were, he finally understood what being an adventurer is really about. He's all smiley thinking about the little flower girl. For them, it was just a dungeon raid for glory. But for the people in that region, it was the salvation of their homes. And so they all apologize for being arrogant at the beginning. They're already swearing to our guy that they want to become true adventurers. Nagi just says it's good to hear that. He's relieved that in the end, the village was protected. And now that everything's over, maybe it's time he tells them the truth. He's not a gold-ranked adventurer. In fact, his rank was even lower than the other two. He was just a white-ranked porter. What now? He's suddenly full of insecurity. He's sitting there wondering, will they still treat you the same way? Of course not. Then, going full drama mode, he says, guys, I gotta tell you something, but please don't get mad. The truth is he faked being the leader, pretended he was strong, said he was gold-ranked, and all that. Nero asks if that's it and says, yeah, it's understandable. Nothing much they can do now. Next time, he's carrying their gear, but for now, he can rest. The door closes, and Petra asks if he really had to go and tell the truth. He answers that all he hopes for is that they truly become good adventurers. After all, now that he's going to be working as a porter in this region, sooner or later he's bound to run into the two of them again. And it's better they find out the truth from him than through someone else down the line. Suddenly, Petra clenches her fists and says that Nagi really isn't an adventurer. In her job as an inspector, she's met countless ones, and most of them only care about treasure and would commit any kind of atrocity for profit. But she's already seen that he's different. Even when there was nothing to gain, he cleared that dungeon and risked his life just to save the village. He's the first person she's ever met who isn't an adventurer. He's a hero. She takes his hand as he lies there, eyes closed, still a bit out of it. Mostly because he's thinking. She has no idea what I just did. Back when Durican and Agnesa were arguing, he noticed something odd to the side. From the middle of the dungeon rift that was closing, a chest started falling, clearly the reward for the break. While everyone else was distracted, he used the last of his strength to shove everything into his bag. And now here he is, hugging it like it's the greatest thing ever. He kept the entire reward for himself again, 2 times in a row. But Petra wasn't the only one who got the wrong idea. Obviously, Nero and Deshtar misunderstood it too. Outside, Nero says, Deshtar, did you hear what Nagi said? That he's just a porter? Deshtar laughs and tells her she must have figured it out. It was obvious. He says, yeah, Nagi's actually a legit gold-ranked adventurer who just likes pretending to be lower-ranked. He might think he's fooling them, but they're not that dumb. Okay, maybe they kind of are. To be fair though, Nagi did pretty much handle everything on his own, so it makes sense. The problem is, this little incident that started everything. It was about to snowball into something way bigger. Durkin walks up to a guy in a white cloak who asks what the interference was. The guy explains that they ran into a strange group and ended up clashing with the Wind of Twilight. The masked man says there's no way they're letting anyone mess with the plans of the Dawn Guild. Meanwhile, at the guild, someone else is standing up, barely keeping her balance. Girl's totally out of it, huh? She's thinking about a conversation she had with Petra about Naji. Along the way, she had asked Petra what actually happened. Why was everyone so beat up? Why did the boy pass out? She wanted the full story. Had they really entered that place without permission? Because the group she saw in front of her didn't match the one that was officially registered. But Petra tells her not to worry, she's not here to judge anything that happened. She just wants to understand the situation. She came all the way here to investigate these dungeon break incidents. Lately, she's been looking into it, and it seems like most of the breaks are somehow connected to the Dawn Guild. And now it just happened here too. Strangely, Petra is surprised. Durrican clearly caused it on behalf of Dawn. He even let something slip at one point. Petra says, fine, she'll explain everything, but on one condition. She has to keep everything illegal at Nagi a secret. With that said, Petra begins telling exactly what went down in there. Back with Agnesa, she still can't believe that the so-called gold-ranked adventurer was really just a backpack boy. If the Dawn Guild hadn't interfered, everything would have been a breeze for him. But what blows her mind is that he still pulled it off. And even more impressive was the kid's mindset, the fact that he risked his life to stop that break. As she walks in, Naji asks if she was the one who saved him. Why's this kid always got his eyes closed? She just wants to know if he's okay. And he says he is, thanks to her. Then she says, I'll get straight to the point. With the authority I hold in the Wind of Twilight, I hereby order you to join my team. He just replies with a simple, no thanks. The next chapter opens with some background on Wind of Twilight. Once one of the most prestigious guilds in the Eastern City, or at least it used to be, until their guild master vanished. After that guy disappeared, the guild went into decline, and now, after a long time, they're holding a meeting. The purple-haired girl speaks up right away. I'm against this. Puffy-cheeked Aunt Dorothy says that no matter how desperate they are, they can't just start accepting anyone. The other guy at the table, named Nines, agrees. Agnes is clearly losing at trying to recruit a guy like that. Not to mention, he looked like a damn porter for crying out loud. But the priestess named Pororo says they're being way too strict. She supports bringing someone new in. Anne instantly snaps back that she's sure the only reason Pororo wants him in is because he's probably good looking. Pororo says, absolutely not. She was only focused on healing the guy, and there's no way she'd care about stuff like that. Anne and Nines, by the way, are both gold ranked. Pororo and the big bear guy are bronze ranked. The bear tries to calm everyone down, saying there's no point in fighting, since it's ultimately Agnes's call. The girls, though, don't seem to like that and say they have minds of their own, and if he keeps yapping, he's going to end up without any healing. The big guy senses he's about to be caught in the crossfire when suddenly the door swings open. Beautiful Agnesa walks in and says they don't need to worry. He turned them down. Everyone turns to her, confused. In the next room, there he is, the boy with his big old backpack, wrapping up his arm and tying his hair back. He stretches his arms and says he's ready. Petra asks if he's already leaving. Wouldn't it be better to rest just a little longer? But he says no, it's time to get back to adventuring. She says okay, but wants to know why he turned down the invitation to join the Wind of Twilight. Guilds come with a lot of perks. He says he knows, and yeah, being in a guild has its benefits, but getting involved with a lot of people always leads to headaches. That's why he likes things the way they are, simple, familiar. Petra says all right, if that's how he feels, she's not gonna push it. But you should remember he's interfered with the Dawn Guild's plans twice now. He'd probably be better off with some guild protection too. The boy, confident as ever, tells her to think about it. He walked away from both situations just fine. Please, my dude, you literally woke up passed out in bed. Not exactly intact. But Petra just nods and says she'll be heading back to the association. He thanks her for everything. As she's leaving, she tells him she'll be waiting for him to stop by sometime. As soon as she walks out, he smirks. He's hyped to check out the loot he snagged. Right away, he calls out for Gluttony and dives into the bag to see what kind of treasures he got this time. With that absurd bag, he can walk, run, even tear through space itself. And deep in that bag, there's Gluttony. Our boy asks what that face is about, and Gluttony just says it's nothing. Naji tells him to spill it. What was inside that chest? He's dying to know. But Gluttony insists it was nothing, just an empty chest. That instantly raises Naji's suspicion. How does a dungeon break chest come up empty? Gluttony says there's nothing shady about it. You can just move on now. Yeah, right. Naji goes to open it himself, saying he's got to check with his own eyes. He starts to lift the lid, light shines out, he's all excited to see what treasure it holds, but then his expression drops. Inside were 3 little bears. Bro, what the hell? What is this? He's sitting there confused, wondering if they're like puppies or some kind of weird baby creature. Then he turns to Gluttony and demands an explanation. Where the heck are the rewards he earned? Gluttony, now crying, says he didn't do anything wrong. He was just taking up the bag like usual. And when he opened it, there were like 3 weird eggs inside. Before he could do anything, a little arm popped out of the first one. And then, out of nowhere, those 3 little critters just popped out and Gluttony went full soft, hugging them like a baby. Naji kinda believes the story and figures they're probably stone monsters that came out of that dungeon. Usually, there are people with the tamer class who love this kind of thing. But judging by their looks, yeah, he's pretty sure these aren't the kind of monsters tamers usually go for, which is a big problem for our guy. He just cleared a tough dungeon, kept the reward all to himself, and in the end, it's just a bunch of tiny creatures. So now what's he supposed to do with them? That's when Gluttony explains he's heard of these three before. Their parents were enslaved by the serpent dragon from the castle, and to prevent the same thing from happening to them, they were sealed inside those stones so no one would ever rescue them. He then asks Naji to let him take care of the kids. He promises Nagi won't have to worry about a thing. Naji turns around and says, fine, I guess. Not much I can do. They do seem kinda useful, so for now, they can stick around. But he lays down the law. If they cause a mess in the bag, he's kicking everyone out. Right after that, Gluttony calls out to the kids and tells them they've got permission now. Bro, what the hell? I thought there were 3 of them. Why does it look like an entire army now? Next thing you know, Nagi's already outside, hearing a whole lot of chaos coming from the inside. Yup, his bag had officially become a zoo. Even if the dungeon break reward wasn't what he expected, at least he still had the loot from the dungeon drop itself. Time to take care of that. At the trade post, he arrives and says he's there to sell all the magic stones and monster drops. The old guy tosses over a big sack of coins and Nagi's pumped. It'd been a while since he last saw one of those. But as always, it was time to restock. Mushrooms, the little things he uses for all his tricks, sharpening his weapons, picking up some extra arrows. Yup, the backpacker was fully geared up again. He grabs a watermelon popsicle and says it's time for a food tour through this unfamiliar city. While he's walking around with his arms stretched out like a plane, someone's watching him from afar, wondering if that's really the guy, the one who messed with the Dawn Guild. He thought it was just a ridiculous rumor, but it actually did look like the white-ranked kid. It was already wild that this kid took down those clowns and got them tossed in jail. But surviving Durican 2? That's something else. He asks what Zero thinks. Does this kid seem strong? The Shadow responds that it's happened twice now, so no, it's no coincidence. Even if he's officially a white rank, it's better to stay on guard. The guy stands up and says he's sure that kid's hiding something. He didn't want to get involved with him, but now he just hopes he won't be disappointed. Bro, is he going in for the attack now? What the hell? He explodes forward like a bullet straight at Nagi, who's just there, happily licking his popsicle, when he senses something coming. Something cracks, and he instinctively dodges to the side. Immediately, he asks, who the hell are you? But the white-haired guy only wants to know how Naji managed to dodge that. He barely even let his killing intent leak out. Clearly, this kid wasn't just some average backpacker. Naji's just standing there, bent over awkwardly, trying to figure out what this guy is even talking about, when bam, another slash comes in and he has to dodge again. The guy tells him to stop hiding and show what he's got. He wants to see this kid's real level. Enough of pretending to be white rank. Our boy is still a bit lost, but now he's got to focus. He spots the guy's insignia, gold rank, mage class. But this dude's charging at him like an assassin. And this level of hostility, it was too much. Just standing there doing nothing wasn't an option anymore. Alright, let's go. Naji draws his massive sword. The guy asks if he's finally ready to take this seriously. He wants to see the sword play Naji used to take those guys down. Nagi's sword play involves shoving 4 mushrooms onto the tip of his blade. The little guys are all wiggling around and he launches in with a bomb right into the middle of the corridor. Our guy says only a crazy person would go head-to-head with an adventurer that strong. The perfect plan? Get the hell out of there. So he runs out into the street and starts yelling for help, shouting that there's a bandit trying to kill him. The guards turn to look and Nagi points. He's right there. He's coming from that direction. I thought the dude would just vanish or back off, but nope. The guard recognizes him. That's Need from the Dawn Guild. And he says it's disappointing to see the kid run away like that. Hearing that, Nagi realizes Petra was right. The Dawn Guild was starting to move against him. A soldier turns to Nide and asks for an explanation. But the guy clearly doesn't care. He just gets ready and says he's there to teach the kid a lesson, charging toward Nagi again. But this time, Nagi doesn't dodge. The hit lands right in his gut and smashes him into a wall. Nade says this little backpacker thinks he can make trouble for the Dawn Guild. Everyone around here knows what happens to people who try something like that. Naji yells that he's lying, that it's his guild's adventurers who've been trying to kill him. But everyone's just staring him down and he realizes it's no use. Just like Petra warned, the Dawn Guild has serious influence in this city. No one's going to risk going against them to protect some white-rank nobody. As expected, the whispers start. People say they've heard stories like this before about white-rank backpackers who pretend to be weak just to scam and rob others. The guard turns to Nag and says, well, that clears it up. Do what you need to do. Then he looks back at Nagi and asks if he understands the situation he's in now. No one's going to stand with him here. Nagi wants to know why he's going so far with this. It was clearly his guild that was in the wrong. Besides, it's all over. So why is he coming after him now? Ned answers that yeah, technically no one really cares what low-ranking trash from Dawn does. The real problem is that Nagi interfered with the guild's plans and that they don't let slide. Nagi realizes it now, and this fear they instill in everyone is exactly what gives them power to do whatever they want. And Ned says that today he's going to help everyone remember why the Dawn Guild must be respected. But not to worry, he's not going to kill him. He likes to carry a symbol of the last person he killed, and he has no interest in carrying around one from a white rank. Still, Nagi's going to walk away with a scar on his face, one that will remind him of the Dawn Guild for the rest of his life. Nate goes for a diagonal slash, a signature assassin move, aimed straight at Nagi's eye. Nagi thinks he's done for. There's no one who'd step in for him. No one in this whole city would protect him. But then, the blade intercepts the strike. He thought it was over, but there she was, Agnesa, standing in front of him, sword out, blocking the blow. Absolute queen. She tells Mead to drop his sword. The boy belongs to the Wind of Twilight Guild now, and any attack on him means war. Next chapter. Mead's walking off, and Shadow Zero asks if he's really okay with how that ended. This definitely isn't the outcome he was hoping for. Mead just replies that there's nothing to be done. Agnesa wasn't part of the plan. You could try to deal with her, but there are others who are more interested in that. Still, this left him with a bad taste. For a simple porter, the kid was better than he expected. But at the end of the day, he's still just an insignificant little boy. At least that's what he tells himself to keep from acting on it again. But then Zero asks if he's really sure about that. That's when Ned notices he's been cut, a slash across his face. He's stunned. He doesn't even know when it happened. He can't remember Agnesa ever landing a hit. Zero says that's exactly the problem. He didn't even notice it. He needs to go back and retrace every single step that happened during that fight. From the moment he found the boy, to the moment he thought he already finished him off. He might have thought the kid had completely given up, but the truth is, not for a second did Nagi stop fighting. Right when Nade came in with that vertical slash, Nagi hit a dagger beneath the flash of the guy's own attack. Since he was sure no one would step in to protect him, he decided to settle it himself. That dagger slipped right through the middle of the strike. Nade didn't even notice it. Zero says what he's already warned countless times. The more Ned focuses on defeating his opponent, the more he lowers his guard. Ned wipes the blood off his face and gives it a little lick, saying Zero's right. That kid's not gonna give up. They'll have to deal with him personally. Back with Nagi, he's putting the little knife away. He had that prepped in case he didn't have time to grab his backpack. But he knows if Agnesa hadn't shown up when she did, his life really would have been on the line. What he doesn't get is why Nede even got involved in the first place. Why send someone that strong just to take him out? Suddenly, someone puts a hand on his shoulder and asks what's got him so deep in thought. It's Nines telling him not to be so shaken up. Then Stone says the kid must be traumatized and needs to take it easy. And wait a second, Stone. The creatures in Nagi's backpack are called Stones too. Are they from the same race? Anyway, the two of them explain that Nade is infamous even within the Dawn Guild itself for causing problems. That's because he runs a whole network of thugs in the city. Nagi says, yeah, he'd heard of the Dawn Guild before, but he didn't think they'd stoop that low. Agnesa agrees she's confused by all this too. That's why she brought Nagi out to this dungeon instead of taking him back into the city. Then once again, she invites him to join them on the dungeon raid. He replies that for now he's good with just doing his backpacking job anyway. But he points out there's a strange chill in the air. This was his first time in a high-level dungeon like this. One ranked B, in a graveyard no less. Nines laughs and says, don't be scared, kid. This dungeon's a playground for us. We're gonna slaughter a bunch of stuff and you just worry about collecting the loot. Nagi thinks he's not wrong. Even if it's a B-ranked dungeon, they've got gold-ranked people in the group, not to mention Agnesa, who's mithril. Honestly, her being here might even be overkill. But there's one thing bothering him. Normally in B-ranked dungeons, you need a well-balanced party, healers, support, defense. But this whole group, just warriors and attackers. Suddenly, Agnesa tells them to stop. Looks like the welcome party had arrived. The first zombie soldiers start showing up in front of her, but the queen doesn't even flinch. She whips out her sword, crouches, and sends a blazing wave that slices right through them. She glances back, draws the sword again, and here comes another wave. She's got style, huh? Those poor undead things are getting absolutely vaporized. But among the horde, there's one buff monster coming straight at her. Nagi points out how this really is a B-ranked dungeon, creatures this strong showing up right at the start. The big one raises its arm for a block and swings hard, forcing Agnesa to dodge. But she springs right out of range. Dang, what a move. She lands behind it, lines up a sword technique, and unleashes a flurry of cuts into its back. Then suddenly, she's on the other side. With that, the creature's core forms a rose-shaped flame, and she torches it on the spot. While she's over there full-on styling, the boys are just standing back like they're watching a 3D movie. They've met tons of adventurers before, but no one this powerful. Talent is the foundation of every adventurer. Obviously, the better your talent, the stronger you are. It's what lets humans go toe-to-toe with these beasts. Agnesa then says they've got no time to waste. They have to move before the monsters start reviving. Everyone kicks into gear. These labyrinth-style dungeons, you kill stuff, but a little while later, it all comes back. And obviously, for reasons like this, they had to move fast. Not just to finish off the monsters, but to run, and more importantly, to wrap things up before he's showing up from behind. That's why it's super important to have either a priest with permanent eradication skills or some holy water from the church. Problem is, both options are insanely expensive. And yep, just like that, the monsters they just killed and ran from were already getting back up behind them. Nine says, as always, they should have brought Pororo, the guild's priestess who's kind of a permanent member. But the problem with that lunatic is that she's a little demon. She charges money for literally everything she does. And of course, in a cemetery dungeon like this, she hikes up the prices even more. Nines can't believe the guild's so broke that they can't even afford the damn Pororo. But Agnesa tells him to stop whining, while Stomon holds off the monsters she's pushing forward. And since Nines loves sitting back and recovering so much, he can stay behind and cheer her on or whatever. Confused, Naji asks why Nines isn't joining the fight. He explains, unfortunately, he forgot his weapon. Naji can't believe what he just heard. The dude came to a dungeon and forgot his sword. Nines tries to make excuses, but his two teammates call him out instantly. He's just hard-headed like that. Always forgets something. Naji tells him to chill. He's got a bunch of backup weapons in his backpack. Just tell him what kind of sword he needs. But out of nowhere, Nines grabs Naji's head and headbutts him, yelling that he's an idiot. He tells him to listen carefully. He only fights with his sword, Elizabeth Robust. That's his oath as a knight. Nagi's just standing there thinking, what's up with this weirdo? Suddenly, up ahead, Stone shouts that there's something weird going on with the monsters. There were way fewer than usual, and they were moving slower too. Agnesa takes a closer look, and sure enough, their feet are all sticky. Someone had laid down a bunch of goo-filled spikes on the ground. She's a little puzzled, but it's obvious who did it. Our sneaky little trap master. Turns out, since he knew the monsters would revive while they were retreating, he'd been dropping traps behind them to slow them down. Nothing fancy, just some slime with spikes. Still, both Stone and Nines admit he's already more useful than Nines, who forgot everything. A bit later, they're on the run again, and someone's yelling about how many damn times these freaks are gonna respawn. Nines is over there complaining that if he had Elizabeth Robus, this would be a breeze. Agnesa tells him to shut up already. They didn't have time for whining. Finally, they spot the exit to the cave. She calls out to Stone and says, it's your turn. He activates his talent, Shield Bearer, and slams the ground, raising a huge wall of stone. The horde of crooked zombies gets stuck behind it, and he says it's handled, though not for long. But when he turns around and tells everyone to run, he freezes because they're standing right in front of a massive underground lake. Nines asks, what the hell is this? Why is there a lake in the middle of a dungeon? But Nagi's hyped, at least there's a little boat there. It's better than nothing. Clearly, this was the only way to cross. Nines, though, immediately says this won't work. That little boat isn't gonna hold all their weight, especially not with Stone's armor, which is crazy heavy. Agnesa tells Nines to toss his armor then. You're not even fighting anyway. Nines is stunned, but Naji agrees, tells him to toss it all into the backpack. The guys start ripping their armor off and throwing it in the bag. Agnesa just stands there, watching, and then freezes because, wait, did this lunatic seriously strip down to just his underwear? Yup, Nines is now down to his boxers. A short time later, they're on the boat, speeding across the lake, and Nines wants to know what the hell that panic scream from Agnesa was all about. Just as he's about to say something, it's already too late. He's got a black eye and is swearing up and down that from now on, he'll never take his pants off again. Agnesa tells him to shut it and stop being annoying until he gets his weapon back, and he fires back that if he had his oath blade with him, he would have handled all of this on his own. She snaps right back at him to zip it, especially since he's the one who forgot his precious oath in the first place. Nagi starts thinking about how a knight's oath is what holds all their beliefs together. Basically, they restrict themselves, set conditions, but in return, they gain enormous power. Danny's like Kurapika, this guy. Nine's oath is pretty straightforward. He can't fight with any weapon that isn't Elizabeth Robust, but in return, that sword became a legendary, unbreakable weapon. Still, Naji asks why he doesn't keep that to himself. Most knights are careful not to talk too much about their oaths, otherwise people might use them as weaknesses. Agnesa agrees completely. The problem is, Nines can't shut up. He talks so much about his sword that everyone in the city already knows. Nines just shrugs and says it doesn't matter. When he's holding Elizabeth, he's invincible. She tells him to ignore him. That idiot's not worth arguing with. Wait a sec. Where's Stone? I don't think I've seen him on the boat at all. Is he inside the backpack with all the little stone creatures? Oh wait, never mind. He's behind Naji. I'm losing it. Stone's there saying that Nagi's backpack is actually more impressive than Nine's sword, especially since it keeps spitting out good food. Nines agrees. Agnesa had stopped slaying zombies just to scarf down toast. So the group's cruising down the river when suddenly, Naji tells them to hold up a second. Something was about to happen. And just like that, their little boat is surrounded by 5 undead creeps paddling toward them. Naji instantly realizes, this boat's a trap. The whole setup is meant to get them drowned. Nines thinks it's ridiculous and asks if Agnesa knew about it and still went along with it. She admits it was kind of inevitable. Of course, they get ambushed on a boat like this. What were they supposed to do? Stay back and do nothing. The problem is, even if she expected a trap, she didn't think they'd be swarmed by this many enemies all at once. Even if she tried to intercept all the boats, they'd drown her before she could finish. Suddenly, a voice from the back says, I've got this. Once again, it's Naji with the damn backpack. He hops out to the back of the boat and tells everyone that if they're fast enough, there's no problem. Agnes is confused. What does he mean that backpack will fix this? He just tells her to hold on. Then, whoosh, he blasts all the air out of the bag, launching the boat forward at high speed. Agnes is wondering if that's some kind of wind magic, but he says calling it magic is giving it too much credit. It's just compressed air that had been stored inside the backpack for ages, and now it's being released all at once. The downside? To refill it, you literally have to leave the backpack open in the wind and wait. The upside? When he needs a burst like now, it flies. The zombies are shooting arrows, but they're flying by so fast that every shot misses. Nagi tells everyone to look ahead. They're heading straight toward a barrier blocking the way. The enemies were already waiting up top. Agnesa says it's fine. She'll break through somehow. But Nagi doesn't want anyone else to step in. He says they've already got enough speed. He just needs to add one more thing. Wind and fire have great synergy. Agnesa decides to trust him and activates her sword's attack. Just as she slashes, Nagi triggers the wind burst again. Flames combine with the gust and launch forward like a wave of fire straight at the bridge. One poor undead on top doesn't even know what's coming, and the barrier instantly explodes, clearing the path. Agnesa charges through full SWAT mode. Moments later, someone asks, "Is everyone okay?" "That was too close," Agnesa says. Now only one thing remained, the dungeon boss. And that's exactly where he finds himself, right inside the Fortress of Death. As they're walking through it, Nine says, "This place has everything: lake, cave, castle. For a B-rank dungeon, this one's way harder than usual. Why does our guild always take on these kinds of missions? We could have picked an easy one with a nice reward for once." Agnesa answers that this is what they always do. He already knows that. Stone turns to Nagi and tells him that it might be his first time, but he better get used to it. That guild of theirs, they always go for the dungeons everyone else avoids. Nagi just replies that it's fine. As a porter, it's the adventurers who suffer, so for him, it's pretty chill. Agnesa tells them to focus. Even if it's only a B-rank dungeon, sometimes the boss that shows up is way tougher than expected. At least this one wasn't trying to hide, since they were already face to face with it. The creature on the throne speaks up, calling them fools for stepping foot into his paradise. This time, the boss was a lick. The entire group knows, a monster like that has no business showing up in a B-rank dungeon, and the thing with magical monsters is they're seriously unpredictable. Agnesa had already burned through a lot of energy just to make it this far, since she's been handling most of the fighting on her own. That meant she needed to finish this fast before anything unexpected happened, so she rushed in. But even though undead are supposed to be mindless creatures that just charge at their prey, the Lich was something else entirely. Even in death, he craved knowledge and carefully studied his enemies. The moment he saw Agnesa coming, he knew she was trying to protect the people behind her, and in that moment, he found the solution. Her sword slash lands straight into the throne, but it's empty. The Lich had used a blink spell to teleport right in front of Nagi, and then he speaks. "Fool, become my servant." He cast a curse spell. But of course, Agnesa does the dumbest thing imaginable and throws herself in front to shield Nagi. And just like that, the worst possible outcome unfolds. She's hit by the Lich's curse and becomes their enemy. Nines immediately tells Stone to grab Nagi and run. Both of them question him. How is he supposed to handle Agnesa alone? But Nines asks what they're even saying. A real knight never turns his back on an enemy. The guy's seriously full of himself, claiming he's got to admit he's kind of a badass. And he just keeps going, saying Agnes has been fighting non-stop and that little flame of hers is about to go out. Apparently, all this is part of his glorious plan. Agnesa glares at him and charges up a blast. She throws a wave of fire straight at him, and he's left completely confused as to how she's still that strong. I thought he was gonna pull anything, but no. He just eats the hit full on, and she charges in, all smooth and elegant, while he fumbles to dodge, crouching in the most awkward way. The best option would have been to run, but he keeps repeating that a knight never turns his back. And then he moonwalks. Yep, he starts doing the Michael Jackson moonwalk, retreating backward toward the door. Meanwhile, outside, Stone and Nagi actually ran. I thought maybe they'd do something heroic, but nah. Look who just moonwalked his way out. Nagi asks him if he wasn't supposed to hold Agnesa back. Nine simply replies that a knight never turns his back. Stone tells him to cut the speech already. He just turned his back on a whole horde of skeletons. But right then they stop at the edge of a cliff, and Nagi tells them to look down. The undead they had managed to avoid earlier, yeah, they had finally caught up. The group was completely surrounded. Nagi says things just went from bad to worse. Below them, an army of undead. Behind them, inside the fortress, Agnesa, now cursed. Stone tells them not to panic. He'll buy them some time and slams the ground, raising a stone barrier. He tries to trap Agnesa inside, but she spots it, jumps onto the edge, and escapes instantly. The guy just claps like an idiot, saying, as expected of a mithril-ranked warrior, yeah, nothing I could do. While Nagi's standing there staring, he's thinking that even just for a moment, he needs to find a way to stop her. The problem is, any weak little trick wouldn't work on someone like her. So maybe this was the answer. He throws something that flies right past her, making her glance behind her. That sneaky brat threw food, and sure enough, like a little cat, she walks over to eat it and looks all happy. Nagi starts sweating, thinking, at least, even under mind control, she's still following basic instincts. But the obvious problem is, this isn't gonna last long. It's time to run back into the fortress and find somewhere to hide. Down one of the corridors, exhausted, he says that at least it doesn't seem like she's following them for now. The problem is, in the meantime, the undead that were below are already starting to climb up and they need a plan fast. 9 says he knows, but nothing about this is gonna be easy. Agnes is getting backup from a lich. She should be out of Aether by now, that's like mana, but she's probably being supplied directly from the boss. That's the only explanation, because if it wasn't for that, 9 says he would have taken her down by himself already. But now the question is, what even is this place they're in? Judging by the pile of items everywhere, it clearly looks like some kind of armory. But Nagi disagrees. These weapons didn't look like the ones the undead were using. If he had to guess, this was actually a trophy room. Liches, being intelligent bosses, like to collect the weapons of the adventurers they killed, like some kind of reward or twisted keepsake. And honestly, that's not even surprising. This dungeon is way too hard for its level, so it's only natural that several other groups have probably failed here before. What he doesn't get, though, is why there are random children's toys, shovels, and teddy bears mixed in with everything. Then Stone chimes in. He remembers hearing something about this. Like he said earlier, they only ever go into the dungeons everyone avoids. When this one first appeared, it became known for something strange. Almost every team that entered failed. And around the same time, people from nearby villages started disappearing. He never thought something like this could happen. But maybe this is what it was all leading to. Nagi says it sounds like a case of a dungeon abduction. Wait, what? Monsters coming out of the dungeon to kidnap villagers? Nines finds that weird. Monsters are supposed to be stuck inside their dungeons. Nagi explains it's just a theory. That kind of thing is extremely rare. Any monster that ends up outside its dungeon becomes a lot weaker. That's why they only ever leave when something abnormal is going on, like a dungeon break, for example. 9 says it's simple. All they have to do is kill that bastard and everything will make sense. He doesn't have a choice. He can't turn his back on an injustice like this. The other two look at him like, okay, but how exactly are you gonna do that without your sword? To which he answers he already has a solution. He pulls out a headband, ties it around his face like a blindfold, and says this way, he'll trick his own oath. Nagi asks if he's sure about this. Normally, breaking an oath like that comes with some pretty serious consequences. And besides, how is this even supposed to work? Nines explains that the oath is a personal thing. As long as he can convince himself it doesn't count, it might just work. All he needs to do is land one single clean hit on the lich. That should be enough to break the mind control over Agnesa. Obviously, Stone has to ask the question everyone's thinking. How the hell are you gonna land a hit if you're blindfolded? Nagi decides to ignore that and just asks if he's really sure. If they could guide him to the boss, would he actually be able to land that blow? But 9 says he's asking the wrong question. It's not about whether they can or not. It's what they have to do. Nagi says, alright then, he'll be his eyes and guide him straight to the boss. Stone's still stressing out, asking how they're gonna pull this off when there's still an entire undead army chasing them from behind. And of course, to land a hit on the lich, they'd first have to get past Agnesa. But the problem is, in front of her is another entire army. The only way through would be if they had an army of their own. Nagi says he's right. They need an army, one that belongs to them. Right in front of the boss, the monsters even make a path as if inviting them in. Then suddenly, one of the little guys runs in screaming, shouting all kinds of nonsense. The lich picks up on it quickly. Those little rats were trying to play. He walks forward, saying to capture all of them, tear off an arm or two if needed. The creatures burst out of the door, running in a panic. Nagi warns the others. They're coming, and tells them to stay behind him. One of the monsters steps on a rope with a mushroom attached. Poof. Another smoke bomb goes off. Gluttony jumps out of the backpack and Nagi tells him to get ready. As long as they followed his lead, he'll handle the aiming. All they had to do was pull the trigger. And obviously, inside the bag is a whole crowd of little stones, all armed with the crossbows they picked up from the trophy room. Gluttony gives the command and the squad fires a full volley of arrows toward the exit. From the mouth of the oversized bag, a hailstorm of arrows blasts out toward all the incoming monsters. Stone's staring like, what kind of attack even is this? Meanwhile, Nagi's gripping the backpack tight, saying their job was to charge through and get straight to the boss. Then the scene shifts to the Adventurers Guild. Petra's sitting with a friend beside her who asks what she's been writing so much lately. She's been acting weird ever since coming back from that dungeon. Are you researching something? She asks. Petra says no, she's just got a lot on her mind and is trying to organize her thoughts. Then she asks, is it really necessary to have a combat talent to become an adventurer? Her friend looks at her like she's nuts. What kind of question is that? Of course you need one. If you don't have a combat talent, how are you supposed to survive in a dungeon? Why else would people go through hell just to get one? She doesn't even bother explaining, just points to the side. Some guy's yelling at the top of his lungs, begging not to be screwed over. His awakened talent is sewing. He shouts that he's not accepting that. That can't be his talent. He's gonna try registering again. But Petra just says he can't become an adventurer. Her friend tells her to face reality. They see people like this every day. The odds of awakening a talent that actually works for adventuring are super low. Petra starts thinking, in this world, your life is basically set from the beginning. The guild supports everyone going through the talent awakening ceremony. It's a process where the ether in your body is analyzed and the name of your ability appears in the book. Most people say it's better to find out early whether you've got natural talent or not, so you know what direction to take in life. Petra used to think that way too, but after meeting Nagi and going through everything they faced together, she started to question it. Is a person's future really determined by the talent they're born with? Back in the dungeon, Nagi's arrow rain is still going and the monsters are all dropping. At the same time, Nagi moves to the front, leading the charge, with Nines following close behind. They might have managed to delay the creatures, but obviously they're going to get back up soon, so they have to move before this chance slips away. Nines asks if this plan is even legit, and even though they're shouting orders and talking big, he still has no idea what's going on. Stone just tells him to show some respect. Nagi's incredible. Now it makes sense, that whole story about him leading an expedition into a dungeon that was on the verge of a break. Nagi just tells them to stay focused, yet we're finally reaching the boss room, where things really begin. And man, I thought the horde was cleared out, but nope. They're all still there, lined up like they've been waiting for the grand finale. They glance around the corner and Nagi mutters that yeah, he expected a lot, but not this many. And they have to keep in mind, the Lich still has his blink ability. That's how he dodged Agnes's attack earlier. Nines tells him not to worry that he's going to take out that freak in a single strike, but then the idiot yells at the top of his lungs. And now they've got no choice but to move forward with the plan. Obviously, to reach the target, they have to get past that wall of undead, but that doesn't mean they needed to fight every single one of them. In fact, they didn't need to fight any of them. Nagi fires an arrow straight at the chandelier. Boom, an explosion, and the entire room goes dark. Undead, by nature, rely far more on scent than on vision to navigate. There's even that old tale about dead walking, where a guy would smear monster scent all over himself to blend in. Wonder which one that is. Anyway, Nagi doesn't have any corpses to use right now, but his backpack's been absorbing the scent of this place for a long time. And now, it starts releasing it. As the odor spreads, they start moving through the troops. Nines asks what's going on, and Nagi just calmly says they're sneaking their way to the Lich. Bit by bit, the group quietly advances, while the Lich grumbles about some cheap trick. You filthy rats actually think something like this would work. He stretches his finger, conjuring a burst of fire that lights up the whole room. But then he looks around. Where are the rats? Stone slams the floor, raising a ramp above the undead army. From there, they approach from the Lich's flank, and Nines is already hyped, saying he can feel it. It's time for the strike. Obvious problem. Agnes is right there on the left. So our boy chucks a pile of food at her, hoping he's got a few precious seconds to pull this off. Nine says he gets it and leaps in for the attack. The Lich locks eyes with him, saying none of them are leaving this place alive. He raises his arm and launches his spell. You'll be torn apart. But, bam, out of nowhere, he gets kicked straight across the room. Both Nines and Nagi freeze. Why did Agnes ignore the food? And then it hits them. She already ate too much, damn it. That's how she maintains those thunder thighs. Stone's completely lost, doesn't know what to do. Nagi tells him it's not too late. Nines could still try again. But just as Nines lets out a battle cry, a literal goddess appears. She declares that Knight Nines has violated his secret oath and abandoned his honor. As punishment, he shall be judged. Nagi realizes Nines isn't going to be able to do anything now, and the entire undead army is closing in. Stone tells him not to panic. He'll hold them off for now. He punches the ground, raising another giant stone wall. Of course that thing's gonna last, 5 minutes tops. And now, they really need a plan, fast. Once that wall goes down, Stone's out of aether. They'll be drained. Back at the association, Petra's friend is still talking. Like she said, there are adventurers without talents. They're the ones who have an insane desire to become one and push through with enough training to reach the same level of strength. But in the end, the deciding factor is still ether. Only those with combat talents can build it up in their bodies. Low-level monsters, beginner dungeons, those can be handled by someone who took their training seriously. But once you start progressing, once you face real bosses, without ether, there's no way to win. Back in the dungeon, Nagi tries the arrow storm trick again, but this time, nothing hits. The shots just drop to the ground. And that right there, that's why not everyone can become an adventurer. Explosions and fire are raging all around, and Nines still hasn't done a damn thing. He says he's going to hold the attacks back and tells them to run while they still can. Our main guy doesn't want to leave, but his friend insists, saying it's his job to make sure everyone else makes it out alive. But the Lich just laughs, saying it's pathetic. Did they really think anyone was walking out of here alive? The guy's forming a full-on black hole in his hand. And yeah, surviving that was not going to be easy. The attack blasts toward Nines, an explosion erupts, and the Lich floats mid-air in the center of the room, mocking them, saying they weren't even worth his entertainment. To him, they were nothing, unworthy of facing him. But maybe, watching former allies kill each other might be amusing. Agnesa launches at Nagi, her flames surging along with her. Meanwhile, back at the association, Petra is still reading and researching, still deep in thought about this whole idea of becoming an adventurer without a talent. Her friend shows up again and asks for the second time, why is she so obsessed with this all of a sudden? She already explained that without a talent, you can't become a proper adventurer. Petra says she knows that, but recently, she met someone who made her start to question whether that's really true. Then she asks Rasha. Finally, we get this woman's name, how many times she thinks a porter usually goes into dungeons per year or week. Rasha thinks for a moment and says at most once or twice. Only the really crazy ones go 3 times a week, so maybe they do like 50, 100 a year. Petra says yep, that's the average, but she knows someone, a certain porter, who does around 300 dungeons per year. Bro's working overtime. Rasha's in disbelief. She wants to know if someone like that even exists. To her, that person would have to be completely obsessed with dungeons. Either that, or they're obsessed with money, or maybe it got some deep, endless hatred for monsters. Back with Naji, he just blocked an attack from Agnesa that was aimed right at his head. Her sword isn't called legendary for nothing. It cut straight through his weapon like it was made of butter. He realizes that when standing in front of real power, there's nothing he can do. The gap between him and Agnesa is massive. He blocks another strike. Another weapon gets slashed to pieces. He pulls out a shield. Another sword. There might be a dozen scattered across the floor, but he's not giving up. He still has one advantage. While adventurers are out clearing dungeons, a porter doesn't have much to do. The only thing he can do is watch them fight. That's why by now he knows Agnesa's fencing style like the back of his hand, her habits, her rhythm. Every one of her attacks starts with a burst of ignition. Then she follows up with a sword technique. The problem is, even knowing that, it all happens in a split second. His reaction time isn't enough. The window between ignition and strike is less than 0.2 seconds. Even if he sees it coming, dodging in time just isn't possible. Still, he's there, somehow managing to block. He's predicting and anticipating every single move based on everything he's observed about how she decides her actions in battle. He needs to be, at the very least, half a step ahead of her. And in this moment, he can only thank Durakan. After their fight, Durakan taught him what it means to face someone with mithril-level speed. The bad part? This is just survival. And you don't win fights by only defending. He keeps pushing toward the Lich, telling himself he needs to find a way out of this situation. He has to strike the Lich or Agnesa to break whatever effect is controlling her. Right now, obviously, hitting her is the easier option. He swings an axe from the side, knowing that the moment he tries to land a blow, she's going to slash through it. And that's exactly what happens. Sword, axe, it doesn't matter. That blade of hers cuts through anything. So what about a spear? Something he can throw? Too late. Already sliced in two. Against this kind of magic, something that looks more like a dragon's breath than any sword technique, even at range, his attacks are completely useless. The only option left was to try every option until something worked. So he tells Gluttony to start throwing every weapon out of the backpack. And oh my god, it was a downpour. Nagi grabs the first one, slash, cut in half, grabs a second, shing, another blade shattered. He stumbles back, picks one up off the ground, crack, gone. This dude's spinning, flipping, swinging pickaxes, rolling side to side, pulling every move in the book. But obviously, nothing's working. Every weapon melts against that infernal flame blade like it's made of paper. Still, he knows he doesn't have time to stop thinking. He has to keep going. How the hell is this white rank even tanking all this? No one knows. But he keeps saying, just a little more, while another billion swords get snapped like twigs. Agnes has got style, pulling out another flame blade, launching an explosive rose, and Naji barely jumps out of the center just in time. In that moment, he knew. This was it, his limit. Before Agnesa ran out of steam, or before her blade broke, his body was going to give out. And sure enough, bam, she lands a clean kick and sends him flying. He screams, crashing across the ground, while the Lich floats above, laughing. This is delightful, the monster says. Most of the hunters who made it this far were garbage. But you're worth something. I want your strength. If you become part of this place, our kingdom will expand. Our empire will rise again in this world. Nagi's just standing there, barely holding it together on the edge of a rug, completely drained. And then he says, a creature planning to attack the world outside is too dangerous to let live. Every monster in every dungeon has to die. He turns to Gluttony and asks how many weapons are left. Gluttony says, just one. Nagi says that's fine. He goes to draw it, but then pauses. Eyes shut, he gently puts it away. It's no use. And right then, in the middle of that desperate moment, Naji loses consciousness for just a second. And in that state, somewhere between dream and death, he remembers why he became so obsessed with dungeons. The day a dungeon broke, and he lost everything. It was then he made the vow he would destroy every last one of them. But that's not something a simple porter could ever do. Some old guy once told him to give up on becoming an adventurer. It was impossible. But then he asked, why did this kid have those eyes? Eyes that didn't belong to someone about to quit. The man raised his finger and said, no one has ever become an adventurer without a talent. But adventurers exist to kill monsters. And if someone could train hard enough to defeat real adventurers, then wouldn't that person be an adventurer too? Even if he had to train for a lifetime, it would be difficult. But there might be one way. Maybe he could master a single sword technique. If he couldn't learn many than just one move that stood on equal ground with any adventurer. And if he could focus for years and years, maybe, just maybe, one strike would be enough to go head to head. And so Naji began training. Just one cut, all his strength, all his will. He practiced over and over, but nothing changed. Of course it didn't. He was up against a wall no one could climb. But even so, he never stopped. And maybe that's why, even while unconscious, his body instinctively took the same stance he trained for years. Everything began with him drawing his sword from the bag. He never had a sheath after all, so of course he always drew it from the backpack. The Lich grins. I'm excited to see how this ends. Once you die, you'll receive the gift of immortality and abandon that mortal body. Agnesa charges forward, and in this world we all know, without a talent, you don't become an adventurer. Without the ability to control ether, you can't cut a monster. But who decided that? Nagi begins to draw the sword, and a single slash tears through the entire room. Something slices right past Agnesa, heading straight for the Lich. The monster watches and doesn't react in time. From his point of view, everything suddenly tilts sideways, because Nagi had sliced straight through him, and now the Lich's head was rolling on the ground. The boy has no idea what he just did, but on that day, that one slash also tore apart the line between those who had awakened ether and those who hadn't. And in the years to come, his swordsmanship would be remembered. The name of his move, SRanks quick draw slash. Wait, SRhan? Isn't that from Javier? From our dear Lloyd Frontero's crew? We're not going to find out because the next chapter opens with a shift. The dungeons kept multiplying. The pace was so fast, humanity, fragile as it was, no longer had the strength to stop it. At this rate of non-stop appearances, the kingdoms of this world were facing total collapse. Only when humans began awakening ether and took on the title of adventurers did they start pushing back against the monsters. They say this clear distinction between those who have ether and those who don't exists for one reason: to protect people. Because in the past, many refused to accept reality. Even without talent, without anything, they'd still try to enter dungeons, and what happened was obvious. They were all slaughtered by monsters. Rasha tells Petra that she has to understand. It might sound cruel, but in truth, it's the only way to protect people who weren't born with talent. Petra knows she's right. As much as she's been following that line of thought, she clearly remembers that day, the dungeon break. The way Naji looked at the thick-thighed warrior queen with awe. You could see it in his eyes, the desire to become an adventurer burn in him. That's why she's starting to believe that just sitting around waiting for someone with great talent isn't what makes an adventurer. And so, she decides to leave those words behind. In other words, she wrote all this down but isn't doing anything about it. Damn it, Petra. Back in the dungeon after Nagi's slash that ended everything, Agnesa finally wakes up. Even her sword had been destroyed, split right in the middle. She wants to know, how did Naji pull that off? But he tells her it's not over yet. That creature was starting to rise again. The Lich screams, demanding to know how the brat dared to lay a hand on his body. Liches, of course, are undead and notoriously hard to kill. Unlike human mages, they're not easy to put down. They have a phylactery, a vessel of life. Unless it's destroyed, they'll just keep coming back again and again. Nagi's thinking he needs to land one more hit, but obviously his body is done. He drops to his knees. Agnesa, radiant as ever, tells him to rest now. She'll fix the mistake she made. She charges the Lich while he screams for her to come at him. And wow, this girl goes full-on acrobat, flipping through the air like she's in some fantasy Olympics. She knew there were two ways to take down a Lich. The first, destroy the life vessel directly. The second, keep attacking over and over until the phylactery runs out of fuel. Thankfully, in Agnes's case, her attacks are fire-based, which means the monster keeps burning. But the Lich insists, none of it matters. He's immortal. She doesn't look convinced. She says he cloaked her entire body in mana earlier, but that just ended up exposing his own weakness. Because the moment she touched that mana, she also saw the source of his life energy, and right away the Lich realizes she's heading for the throne. Her attack hits dead center, and the Lich lets out a guttural scream. He starts to dissolve on the spot, mumbling that all of his dreams are disappearing. Beautiful. She stands beside the throne and immediately turns, asking if Nabi's okay. She just finished off the boss, but what she really wants to know is what the hell was that technique he used? Poor guy just flops backward and says he has no idea. He's just glad it all worked out in the end. Thankfully, they had her there too. But she says she doesn't deserve any credit. She actually made a mess of everything, and she's not fit to be a leader. Even though she was under the Lich's control, she still remembers everything that happened. And she knows she has the physical strength, she has ether, and she has fully unlocked talents. The difference between them should have been overwhelming. And yet, even so, he managed to use a technique that not only shattered her sword, but also took down the Lich behind her. What she needed to acknowledge wasn't just his attack power, but the fact that he never gave up, no matter what. In that moment, a memory surfaces. Someone once told her to remember this. What their guild needed wasn't adventurers with overwhelming strength. What they truly needed were adventurers with unshakable willpower. Someday she'd meet someone like that, and when she did, she'd understand why. Someone who, even in the face of a full-on crisis, refuses to back down. That kind of person can't be measured by rank. That's a true adventurer. And now, as the vice captain of Wind of Twilight, it was her job to make sure this boy joined their ranks. She calls out to Naji, saying she's going to ask one more time. Their guild isn't the type chasing gold or fame. The only reason they exist is to eliminate dungeons and stop breaks from happening. And that's exactly why they're always taking the dungeons no one else wants to touch. It's also why they're not here recruiting the strongest fighters. They want people with resolve. People like him. People who throw everything on the line just to save others, even when they expect nothing in return. And now, this tall goddess, thighs and all, she looks at him and asks, "Do you want to join us?" He's frozen thinking about it. A guild focused entirely on preventing dungeon breaks. That used to be his dream. But he'd never found anything like it, until now. He remembers the old man who told him he was too late, that the village he cared about had already been destroyed. And Nagi wonders, maybe this is what he really wants. He reaches out his hand, fingers tight together, and says if that's what she wants, then he'll give it a shot. Together, they'll put an end to dungeon breaks. She welcomes him to the team, and right then, Stone wakes up. He's confused, groggy, has no idea what happened. He looks up and sees Agnes is standing there. They catch him up, and from what he understands, someone slashed something, Agnesa woke up, and then killed the boss. That's it, he says. But Agnes is already walking over to Nines, ready to ask if this useless idiot actually did nothing while she was unconscious. She tells him to wake up. He's all twisted and half asleep, but jumps up in a panic. Out of nowhere, he charges her, grabs her shoulders, and headbutts her, yelling that this will wake her up. Then turns to Naji and proudly says, "See that? You realize how amazing I am, right?" Obviously, Agnes is ready to beat the hell out of Nines, saying today is the day he dies. And so begins the brawl. But that's it. Cemetery dungeon complete. Now that you think about it though, this whole dungeon run, it was just to get away from the guys trying to kill Nines outside. Nines says, yeah, that whole thing was basically a nightmare. But Agnesa looks to the side and says their job's not over yet. There were still items recovered from the cemetery. Normally, the association sends people to return those to the families. But since this dungeon was isolated, way out in the middle of nowhere, that likely wasn't going to happen. So they decided to take care of it themselves. In one of the houses nearby, a woman is preparing soup, pours it into a bowl, and sits down with her husband. But then, you notice, there's a third bowl. A little one, for a child. Oh god, the child died. Taken in the dungeon. Nagi knocks on the door. When they open it, they see the little bear in his arms. And that's it. The truth had to be told. To Nines, this was often harder than the dungeon itself. But it was something that had to be done. Sometime later, all the items have been returned to the villagers. On the way back, Agnesa says he's probably thinking they're going a bit too far, but this was part of what their guild stands for. Nagi tells her it doesn't bother him. That family, they used to make an extra plate of food every day, holding on to hope that their loved one would return. And now, all he can think is how sad it is that the news they delivered today also took away the last bit of hope they had left. Agnesa, though, says that in a way it's better like this. At least the family won't be stuck waiting forever, not knowing if that person will ever come back or not. Maggie looks a little startled by that answer. Then Nines jumps in, asking why a lich would be kidnapping humans in the first place. She replies that it's hard to say. All she knows is that cemetery-type dungeons tend to get more dangerous the longer they're left alone. But what really struck her as strange was what she saw in the final moments of that lich's life. He was crying, and she clearly heard him whisper an apology to the creator. That's a name adventurers don't even dare to speak. The world of dungeons is already filled with weird, unexplained things, and now she has a sinking feeling that something big is coming. A storm's on the horizon. Then she tells them straight she doesn't know why the kidnappings are happening. But as adventurers, all they can do is keep clearing dungeons before it happens again. After that mission, they headed back to the city. It took about a week, and when they got there, something felt off. Nagi's looking around confused until someone reaches out a hand and asks for a coin. It's Nero and Deshtar. Turns out, life hasn't been going so great for the two of them. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten about these poor guys. But hey, they're good people. They've been bothering the chubby little one for hours already. That's when she says that from what she's heard, that kid's not even a real hero. So yeah, they were all fooled. She tells them to go bug someone else. Even so, the two of them keep saying they want in, that they're gonna follow him forever. She realizes they're not going to listen no matter what she says. Then it's like she gets an idea to make them give up. So she tells them there's an entrance test. If they were eating, they didn't need to take it. Obviously, the two of them say they're in. So she goes, all right then, and tells them the test is to gather 5,000 gold coins. They gave it their all, did as many quests as they could, but even after putting everything together, they didn't even have 500. How were they ever supposed to join this guild at that rate? That's when, out of nowhere, this yellow-haired guy asks if what they're after is money. If they dream of getting rich fast, all they needed to do was place a bet with him. Opportunities like this didn't come around every day. Good grief, the Gurkhan starts roasting them, calling them a pair of weird-looking dummies, and maybe he had a point. That's when they found out that in this life, the fastest way to make money is also the fastest way to lose it all. Of course, they lost every single coin flip and ended up broke, completely bankrupt. Naji asks if they seriously got into gambling and have been starving for days. They say it's not exactly like that, but all he can think is that these two really are a couple of hard-headed fools. Still, he also knows that whole guild entrance test thing was just a way to squeeze money out of them. That's when they ask him about what happened with Agnesa inviting him to the guild and him turning it down. He says he did turn it down, but in the end he accepted. Deshidar pleads with him, asks him to please help them get in too. But then suddenly he stops and says he gets it now. They need to pass the test because it's the only way to show what they got. The only problem is 5,000 gold is a ridiculous amount of money. So once again, they ask for help, and MANHWA wants to help. The problem is, in that last dungeon, he literally broke every single sword he had. So yeah, he's also in need of some cash. But the guy remembers a certain dungeon that's perfect for making money and figures he should go check if it's open. Back at the adventurer's office, Petra's there working when our guy shows up and calls for her. Right away, Miro says they're there to make money. They really need it. Then our guy says he's planning to take those two crazies into a dungeon and wants to see which ones are available. Petra's about to say something about how even he can't just pick any dungeon he wants, when suddenly she lights up and says he must be thinking of that dungeon. Scene cuts to one of those miner carts flying down the tracks, and the two of them are speeding through the cave. Deshidar wants to know why in the last dungeon they were going upward, but in this one, they're just going deeper and deeper. Naji tells him not to worry, they're almost there. And of course they're using the old backpack technique. Not long after, they reach the lower levels. Everyone's confused because there aren't any monsters around. Naji explains that's because this dungeon was cleared out a long time ago. This is what's known as a mining dungeon, a place rich in minerals and obviously perfect for earning cash. These kinds of dungeons don't disappear even after they've been finished, and because of that, people can still take missions to come here with a pickaxe and gather whatever ores they can find. Naturally, since it's so good, the upper areas usually get picked clean real fast, but it's a different story when you head to the deepest levels. Then he tells them to take a look. Man, there were ores everywhere. Normally, nobody even goes down that far because it takes forever to get there. But since they used the backpack trick, they got there in no time. And not just that, it's tough hauling all that ore back up, unless once again you got that backpack. Let's be real, that backpack is straight up broken. Then Naji says it's time for everyone to start mining. The good old honest Minecraft grind begins, and those two dopes are wondering why no dungeon they go to is ever normal. Nearby, Naji's wiping off sweat, thinking it's been a while since he spent any time in that place. Back in the day, he used to be the master of this place, but now he's already getting exhausted after just a few hours. Or maybe it's also that sword technique from earlier that drained his energy, and his body still hasn't recovered. When he doesn't understand what that technique even was. It felt like, for just a second, he poured every fiber of his being into that one attack, a power that could rival even high-level adventurers. He's standing there daydreaming, thinking maybe his moment has finally come, when suddenly, Gluttony shows up. Naji already knows the little menace must have caught the scent of all that ore, and is ready to devour everything. But right at that moment, the other little guys pop out too. Oh boy, and they're coming out with pickaxes in hand. Everyone's hungry, right? So they slap on some helmets and dive right in. I'm telling you, this guy's backpack is busted. It's like he brought a whole crew of miners with him. Nagi's amazed. They've even lined up and are tossing everything into the backpack. Of course, 10% of whatever they gather is going to get eaten, but who cares? It's totally worth it in the end. Then he calls out for Miro and Deshidar. But right then, he makes a critical mistake. There's one phrase you should never say in a dungeon. One of the scrawny little guys says, "There's no monsters around, it's so peaceful." And sure enough, the next second, they get smacked around by monsters. Deshidar's standing there smiling, saying that at this pace, they'll spend a few weeks in here and clear the whole place. Might as well bust the whole dungeon wide open and haul everything out in one go. Regular adventurers wouldn't stand a chance. But he's no ordinary guy. Man, the dude slams his thumb down and sets off an explosion. I thought he was going to summon his golems to farm, but no. He says it's a brilliant idea, and Miro congratulates him, saying it really will speed things up. But then the wall behind them starts to crack. What's going on? His whole face turns red, and right out of that wall, a stone golem appears. Honestly, I was hoping for a fire golem. Why not spice things up? It looks scary at first, but now that it's stomped onto the ground, it's kinda cute, or maybe not, because now it's chasing them, and Nagi's yelling for everyone to get out. Turns out Deshidar's explosion triggered a secret area in the dungeon. Secret rooms are exactly what they sound like, and they usually hold way rarer treasures than the rest of the dungeon. Problem is that Yellow Guardian Golem is a rank C monster, and this party, it's just 3 unlucky silver ranks. They don't stand a chance. To make things worse, the escape route they were heading for is now blocked. The guy's explosion messed up the whole place, and the idiot's standing there thinking that was a compliment. Unbelievable. That's when Gluttony pops out of the backpack and says he and the boys will handle it. Starts hacking away with a pickaxe to open a path. Naji thanks him, but now they've got a bigger issue. That monster. Deshidar steps up, saying to get out of the way. He's the one who woke it up, so he'll take care of it. But the protagonist warns him that it's way too risky. They're in a deep underground dungeon. and if a chain explosion goes off, they could all end up buried alive. Realizing he can't even use his golems here, Deshitar figures out he's basically just another guy in the party now and quietly plops down in a corner. Miro, on the other hand, says her moment has finally come. She's been waiting for this. And just like that, she charges forward, full of confidence, saying she's going to take care of it. Nagi tells her to be careful. Fighter types and golems don't mix well. Obviously, the Lumitic goes in with a flying kick, but doesn't do a damn thing except hurt her own foot. Right after that, the boss starts chasing Deshitar again while Nagi asks what kind of ability Miro even has. She says she's got athleticism and flexibility, which isn't really a special ability at all. The poor girl tells him not to bully her just because she doesn't have any real talent. Nagi's starting to realize that these two really don't have anything useful. For an adventurer to make the most of their potential, they need some kind of special skill. Still, being the nice guy he is, he tells her it's fine. Her physical stats were already reaching the level of real power. But deep down, he knows the fight is on him now. He's going to have to use the only weapon he's got left, a relic he got back in the cemetery dungeon. Wait a second, now that I think about it, we never even found out what kind of treasure he got. Stone wanted to sell it off right away, saying it was worth a fortune. And Nines asked for it too, said he liked the design. But of course, Agnesa shut both of them down. Anyone who didn't help out wasn't getting a single thing. Took it for herself, sneaky as ever. Oh, but then she gave it a little polish and said it belonged to Nagi. All shiny and beautiful, she told him it was his now, especially after he went through dozens of swords. This blade, it's number 444, a rare ranked sword called the Blade of the Dead. We're talking next level gear way beyond anything you'd buy in a shop. The only issue is that to activate its technique, he needs extreme focus and time. So he tells the two of them to buy him some time and steps forward, saying he's going to handle this. Nero rushes in and man, I swear the artist got something going on with thighs. This girl's about to burst out of the page. The giant golem swings down from above, but she uses her flexibility to land right on its hand. Total Lieve Ackerman style, she's running up the arm like it's nothing. But she's got to jump back down, dodge again. Meanwhile, Nagi's deep into his ritual, slowly drawing the blade while she keeps dodging. The golem's starting to lose its mind, and she just says that if she can't even pull this off, she has no right to call herself an adventurer. Deshitar, though, realizes she's starting to lose it, saying that she always did during training. He yells at Nagi to do something already. Our guy's starting to draw the sword, but I've got this bad feeling it's gonna fail. Nero's ducking and weaving, thinking back on how she's never had any special ability. On top of that, she was always humiliated for being from the Beastkin race. But even so, she's determined to become a great adventurer. She keeps sprinting and dodging, and Nagi's beginning to awaken the aura in his sword. He can feel the same energy from before building up again. Deshitar yells at Nero to look behind her. Something's coming. Just as the golem swings at her, she glances back. Nagi goes for the slash, but she takes a hit and goes flying. Still, our guy tries to pull off the fast draw. Did it work? The blade slices into the golem, rips through, and then boom, a massive explosion. Deshitar's standing there stunned, saying what the captain just did was incredible. He wonders if the monster's really dead. Honestly, I'd love to know too, but that's where the chapter ends. Damn it, on to the next. It opens with a chubby girl saying that one try is hard, sure, but in the end, she's still useless. Must have been rough having to train with her. She was probably the only one there who didn't have a single special ability. That's why she was always stuck running errands for everyone. Man, she even got mocked just for being a black-eared cat girl. Like seriously, black cat prejudice? Back in the fight, she's lying there all beat up, and Deshitar asks if she's okay. But all she wants to know is if the captain actually took down the golem. Nagi says no. At the last second, he lost focus. Yeah, he managed to activate the ability, but the slash came out all crooked. Deshitar starts arguing with Nero, saying it was her fault, that she got thrown and ended up in his line of sight. The poor girl's already not that confident, so of course, she's in tears. But Nagi steps in and says it wasn't her fault. It's just that the technique he used is still incomplete. I'm still impressed that he's even managing to pull it off. This guy's on the way to becoming a true adventurer. The only problem now is that his body's completely drained. At this rate, there's no way he can handle that golem, which is already coming back for more. Nagi's about to tell them what they need to do, but a storm of rocks suddenly starts flying straight at them. Everyone gets tossed around, and at the same time, these little stone things start rising from the ground. All right. Turns out Deshitar had summoned some kind of barrier, I think. Nobody's really sure what to do, and before they can even come up with a plan, the monster's already swinging its giant hand straight at Deshitar. He screams in panic, but Nero pulls out a pickaxe and goes in swinging, yelling that she'll handle it. Nagi tells her to back off, it's too dangerous, but she's already saying that overthinking stuff just isn't her thing. Those cheap weapons she had before were just slowing her down. She knows golems are full of weak spots, so she's just gonna go in swinging. But instead of breaking anything, she's just making the golem all bloody. She punches the same spot again and again, landing a full combo. A small crack finally starts to form, but the golem sends her flying. Poor poor girl, nothing ever goes her way. She remembers back in the training grounds how she used to spar with the other team members and force them to acknowledge her strength. But even when they said they accepted her, deep down she knew they didn't mean it. That's why she trained like crazy. Lindo's drills, Saitama's sprint workouts, Rock Lee's kicks. She went through all of them. Deshitar, reckless as he is, was able to summon those explosive creatures. And the captain? He sliced half the golem in one clean strike. In the end, she felt like the only failure in the group. If she couldn't do anything, how was she ever supposed to stand beside them as an equal? The golem goes in for another hit, and Deshitar tells her to move. But she just says she's going to prove herself. Then something happens, some kind of explosion, and both of them freeze in confusion. What just happened was something Naji's seen countless times during his days as a porter. Something that only happens to adventurers. It's the moment of awakening. A glow surrounds the girl, and suddenly, she finds herself walking across a lake. She's confused. It feels like just a second ago, she was in the middle of a fight. Then someone ahead calls out to her, telling her to follow the path of battle. Standing before her is the monument of the martial artist Gladiator Galatas, who tells her she's being blessed with martial strength to slay monsters and protect this world. Back in the dungeon, Nero clenches her fists and activates her special ability, the shockwave talent of the martial artist. Her punch lands square on the golem's massive arm, and it looks like the whole thing shatters all the way to the shoulder. The creature's body twists awkwardly, and she follows up with a barrage of strikes to its chest. The absurd name of the combo? Nyan. And the two clueless guys are just standing there with their mouths wide open while the golem crumbles like a puzzle. The next chapter talks about special abilities, which, let's be real, we already know all about. The difference in this world is that some of them only awaken when something important happens in your life. Of course, the ability that kind of reflects who you are. For example, Stone's powers are based on rock because that's his natural talent. But if he were plant-based, it'd be something with vines or roots. That's why even adventurers with the same abilities can end up with totally different versions. The little stones are all mining away when Nero walks up and tells them to relax. She's got this. One punch and the whole area is cleared out. She tells them to toss everything into the backpack. But suddenly the girl starts swaying and collapses, completely drained. Naji tells her to take it easy. That kind of ability burns through a lot of aether. She's feeling full of herself now, saying that she really is amazing. She's giving it everything she's got. Meanwhile, over by the rubble, Deshitar is looking at this weird little blue thing he just found. It popped out of nowhere, right from the middle of the golem. Naji explains that he's only seen it a few times before, but that's something called a soul resonance. Some necromancers, after defeating a boss, could kind of extract a part of it, almost like a pet. Deshitar grabs it right away and claims it as his, but the thing suddenly disappears. Actually, it looks like it's being absorbed. Turns out, he's fusing the soul of that golem into his own body, into his fingers. And right then, a soul mark appears on his hand. He lifts his hand like it's nothing, hits the summoning gesture, and acts like he's some Jinwoo, shouting arise. The creature shows up just like when it was a boss, huge and terrifying. But the energy is so intense that the moment it appears, it's already wobbling, and he commands the beast to kneel. Nero's mad about it. She did all the hard work, so why does his reward look better? Still, watching it all from a distance, Naji can only think that this is how adventurers suddenly become insanely powerful, practically overnight. It happens so fast, there's no way a regular person could keep up. Sure, he's genuinely happy to see them improving, but it's still frustrating when he compares it to how long it takes him to do anything at all. He tells them to calm down. For all their excitement about killing the Guardian, they still need to get through the secret treasure room. While they're on the way, he warns them to stay sharp. Just because the big guy's gone doesn't mean it's all clear. The two are already praying out loud for some high-quality loot. They're desperate for money at this point. Then Naji asks something. Why are Deshitar and Nero always together? Usually, people from the trading grounds end up going their separate ways. Deshitar says he honestly has no idea when they even became friends. That's when Nero remembers a time she was standing at the door, and there he was shouting for everyone to shut up while summoning a bunch of golems, claiming that in the future, nobody would ever stand a chance against him, the one gifted with necromancy. Nero just says there's no need to even ask. It was kind of inevitable they'd end up as friends. Deshitar agrees, saying of course they did. They're both incredibly talented, and good things are naturally drawn to each other. But now they're both curious about the captain. What exactly is that backpack of his? Strange stuff keeps coming out of it all the time, but he said from the start that he was just a swordsman. Naji says he's a pretty rare case. Normally, people get talents that match who they are, but in rare situations, someone receives something custom-made, tied to a specific piece of equipment. That backpack of his is one of those rare cases. And yeah, most of the time, the stuff people get isn't even all that useful. Nero says she wants to take a peek inside to see what it's like. He says he doesn't mind, but when she touches it, she can't even reach through. It's like there's nothing there at all. Then he reaches in and pulls out 2 lollipops, and it's kind of like magic, only works for him. The two of them immediately say that this is the perfect skill to make a fortune. Though of course it's not exactly ideal for clearing dungeons. Naji tells them not to underestimate it. He's already used it to launch several businesses. The guys run a restaurant, work as a delivery guy, and more. But in the end, he's not doing all this to get rich. What he really wants is to help other adventurers take down at least one more dungeon. And for him, that's enough. Finally, they reach the reward chamber, where there are 3 little golem statues holding out their hands. Naji knows these are what's called trade statues. If you give them something they're looking for, they'll give you a reward in return. But they don't need to worry. These ones never ask for anything valuable or expensive. All you have to do is observe. The first one, for example, looks like a farmer. For one of these, all you have to do is offer something simple, like say a potato. And just like that, the statue gives back a green gem. That alone was already enough to hit their gold quota. Then they move on to one that looks like a sorcerer. Obviously, it would need something a mage would like too, so he offers a magic stone. But the statue gets upset and splashes everyone with the strange liquid, which turns out to be a weakening potion. Unfortunately, now it's down to the last one, the zombie statue. The others tell him to be careful, not to mess this one up. Since it's a zombie, Nero's convinced it needs blood or maybe human flesh. Meanwhile, Deshinar wants to offer one of his own fingers. Nagi's debating whether to give it bone, meat, or a potion when it hits him. Every zombie was once human. Maybe that's what it's really asking for. He puts in an apple, not sure if it's a regular apple or something special. Oh wait, it's one of those sacred apples, the kind that carries a trace of purifying energy. If he's right, what the zombie really wants is freedom from its curse. A drop of juice slides from the apple and touches the zombie's palm, and suddenly it starts remembering all the bad times, wandering around aimlessly like a Minecraft mob. Then, with a glow, the zombie's head begins to heal and the statue transforms into a hidden pedestal revealing a massive pair of shears. The treasure chests slowly open, and right away, Naji realizes what's inside is a relic. But before we even find out what it is, the scene jumps back to the guild, where they're handing in the money. Of course, Nero and Deshitar are feeling like hotshots now, saying they're officially part of the guild. At first, they thought the guild lady was trying to scam them, but now they get it. She wanted them to grow through the challenge. She says, yes, of course. That was totally the plan, while you're sitting there wondering what's up with those 2 idiots. But she doesn't care, she's gonna blow all that money on a shopping spree anyway. Sometime later, they're arriving at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, strutting in like they own the place. Petra sees the emblems on their chests and congratulates them for officially joining the guild. And those 2 immediately start boasting, saying the guild clearly has an eye for true talent. Nero's already going off about everything she did. Blah, 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 and Petra just replies with, impressive. That's when Naji walks in and says he needs someone to examine an artifact, an unidentified martial arts relic. Petra congratulates him while Deshitar immediately suggests they sell it. But Nero cuts him off, saying no way. That was their first relic from their first dungeon together. When they first opened the chest, Deshitar was in shock, asking what a relic even was. That's when Naji realizes he's stuck with 2 total rookies who don't know a thing. But he also points out that, considering Nero awakened her new ability in that place and they found a relic at the same time, everyone's probably thinking the same thing. Nagi wants to give it to Deshitar as a gift. Deshitar, of course, still wants to sell it, but Nero's just celebrating, saying she's keeping it for herself. Back at the guild, Deshitar keeps saying no way, that relic's just a regular item, so they should sell it off. Naturally, Petra cuts in and tells him that no relic is just some ordinary item. Relics are like the heart of an adventurer, and often the only reason they're able to complete high-level dungeons. These things are so rare that some adventurers only go into dungeons hoping to find one. Naji agrees. There are people out there rocking full Saint Seiya cosplay just to look the part. But ironically, the existence of relics is what makes equipment like his backpack kind of obsolete. Doesn't matter how strong your ability-based gear is, in the end, there's always a relic out there that's way better. Petra nods and says alright, then uses her analysis skill. The feather pen begins writing automatically, revealing the relic's info, and at that moment, the stone starts to crack. From inside the relic, the imitator's ring appears, a ring that supposedly lets you copy a user's ability. Wait, but does it copy someone else's ability or does it duplicate your own? Nero doesn't even get to ask, because the thing immediately flies onto her arm and equips itself on its own. Petra congratulates her, saying that only happens when there's high compatibility. That's because a lot of relics actually choose who gets to use them. Of course, Petra wastes no time telling Deshitar that it's settled. This one belongs to her now. Then Nagi holds up the broken sword from the cemetery and points out the real issue with relics. It's already starting to crack, and repairing one of these things is incredibly difficult. Petra asks how he let it get in that state, and he explains that it got damaged during the attack on the golem. She finds that strange. Relic 444 is supposed to be pretty tough. How'd one hit mess it up that badly? While Deshitar is still begging him to sell it, Petra can't stop thinking about how every time she sees Naji, he just keeps moving forward, while she's still stuck in the same place. He waves goodbye, thanking them for everything they did, and their little group walks off, leaving her standing there, looking shaken. Meanwhile, Racha, sucking on her finger, seems to notice something. Back at the Twilight base, Agnesa is drawing X on a map, marking the 30th dungeon collapse. At this point, there's a visible pattern forming, and naturally they all connect, either directly or indirectly, to the Dawn Guild. And following that path, she knows exactly where the next one will happen. They could try to get ahead of it, but doing that would mean facing those guys head on. The scene shifts to that masked guy from Dawn. He says he won't tolerate any more failures. That damn Twilight Guild has been interfering with his plans for too long. That's why, no matter what, this next operation has to succeed. Need, standing beside him, asks why he seems so nervous. Ai's already down in that dungeon. It should be an easy mission. And yep, that's Ai sneaky and dangerous. Need even says she's like a viper. Once she's locked onto a plan, there's no way she's letting go. Unfortunately, even if Agnesa goes there herself, this might be her final stop. Speaking of her, we cut back to Agnesa, who knows exactly how Dawn operates. They cause the problem and then clean it up after, which is why no one's catching on. But it's clear now, they're putting countless lives at risk. That's when Nagi shows up, asking what she wanted to talk to him about. She tells him there's an A-rank dungeon about to collapse. Nero, and Deshitar instantly volunteer, but of course they're immediately shut down. She tells them they're still way too weak, and the poor two are just standing there, totally crushed. She's certain neither of them would survive inside that dungeon. Nero wants to speak up, but just standing near Agnesa, she can feel the power gap in the air. The pressure alone is enough to silence them completely. Nagi, though, asks why they were even called in if the dungeon is that dangerous. Agnesa explains, yes, the A-rank dungeon will be handled by Nines' team, but there's another one, and it's perfect for his group. It's a massive underground labyrinth known as the Ant Nest, and she wants the three of them to go there and clear it. She's really putting her faith in this little trio. No healer, one of them's a backpacker. The squad's not exactly stacked girl, but she simply says that this time Nagi will be leading the group. He tries to protest, saying it's not possible. He's just a porter. But she tells him that when he was recruited into Twilight, it wasn't because of his carrying skills. It was because he's an adventurer. And that's why, for this dungeon, he's going to be in charge and make sure the mission is completed. This would be the first time our boy takes the lead. The problem is, what's waiting for him down there is way beyond anything he could have imagined. Right outside that dungeon, a knight is seen running away in total panic. And good grief, the guy takes a massive spear straight through the chest. He looks back completely stunned, wondering how in the world this place got classified as rank C. That creature, at the very least, should have been in an A-rank dungeon. And because of that, his entire party was wiped out. Then there's the shady little witch saying she's excited for Agnes's arrival. Wait, if Nagi's heading into that dungeon and this girl's waiting there, then where's the other one? Or are we talking about two different people now? There's nothing but curvy women in this world, apparently. Back at Twilight, Nagi's starting to feel the pressure. After all, someone at gold rank should probably be leading this team, not him. But she tells him not to worry. She already taught him everything he needs to know, and it'll all be fine. He points out that even if it's only a C-rank dungeon, there's still a chance they could fail. She says that's true, but it's normal. Dungeons like this are usually tackled by several groups working together. So even though they're going in as a trio, there will be other teams helping out. Besides, he practically cleared an entire labyrinth on his own, so she trusts him. She personally chose him, and now she's asking him to start believing in himself too. On top of that, she knows of a certain someone who's going to be in that dungeon, and that person will be the perfect support for him. Nagi says he understands, but he's still worried. It is an ant nest, and he knows what kind of problems those usually bring. Both of them agree the big issue is exploration. Obviously, an ant nest is like a maze with dozens of paths and exits. Without a professional scout, it's nearly impossible to clear something like that. Agnesa says she's aware. She's been trying to find a pro explorer, even if it means hiring a mercenary. Problem is, none of them seem reliable. Cut to Petra, who's wondering what it even means to be an adventurer these days. A group of raccoon-themed explorers shows up. The one on the left looks like a knockoff Deshitar from Walmart, the one in the middle is a Petra from AliExpress, and the one on the right is basically a stone from Temu. Apparently, they're old friends of Petra's. They say they haven't seen her since school. She's about to tell them it's nice they join a guild. The one in front cuts her off, asking since when they talk so casually. Sure, it might have been school friends, but now Petra's just a white-ranked adventurer. And they should take note, this girl here already made it to silver. She throws her stats on the table, telling Petra to understand something. No matter how good her grades were back in school, today she's struggling to make ends meet as an adventurer. Petra stands there awkward, admitting she really isn't much of an adventurer. Then the girl flips her hair and walks off, saying they'll talk another time. Rasha shows up and asks who those people were. Petra explains. They were classmates from school. Turns out she went to an explorer's academy. There's a rumor there. If you're a mediocre explorer, you eventually become an inspector. That's where all the bullying comes from. Talented people go into dungeons. Those without talent, they're stuck behind desks. That's why inspectors are seen as failures, people who didn't have the heart to become real adventurers. Rasha says she's a textbook example of that. She used to dream about becoming an adventurer, but when she realized she had no talent, she settled for being an inspector. But she points out that Petra doesn't seem like that. She could absolutely become an adventurer. That's why it's strange to see her stuck as an inspector. Petra explains it's because her grandfather is completely against it. Rasha figures he must be a strict guy, but Petra says no. He's a total crybaby who begged her not to go. That's when Rasha realizes this was never really Petra's decision. She gently asks her to be honest with herself. What does she actually want? After all, she's read some of the things Petra's been writing. Petra instantly gets flustered and tells her to quit it, but Rasha says she feels the same way. She saw the way Petra looked at that backpacker, Naji. It was obvious. Like her eyes were screaming that she wanted to become an adventurer too. In the next scene, Petra's wandering alone through the quiet streets, remembering the moment she told her grandfather that her biggest dream had always been to become an adventurer. But hold on, I don't get it. That guy with the stone head, is he a statue or what? I'm a little confused here. The truth is, no matter how badly Petra wanted to become an adventurer, she also wanted to make her grandfather's life easier. After all, he was the one who raised her when she lost her parents. The problem is, this was the only dream she ever had, and maybe she shouldn't have given up on it so easily. Rasha straight up tells her she's being an idiot. Her grandfather might want her to live a safe, stable life, but what he really wants is for her to be happy doing what she wants. Now, standing in front of the door, Petra's wondering if Rasha was actually right, and when she steps inside, she announces she's there to take the adventurer exam. She wants to change careers and stop being an inspector. The old man tells her he only has enough time before his tea gets cold, and that besides, this isn't worth it. She should stick with inspection. Petra says maybe so, but today she found out about the test, and she wants to give it a shot. The old man responds, well, that's a shame, because I'm today's examiner. His name is Mr. Pot, but she can call him the adventurer killer. Of course, he gave himself that name, and he earned it, not because he ruins people's lives, but because he ends their dreams. He says he has no interest in testing someone like her who's just looking to switch careers. She should know that success in a situation like this is less than 5%. Maybe she thinks she's improved, grown stronger with time. But all she's going to find is disappointment, because the analysis machine is absolute. If she didn't have talent before, she doesn't have it now. Nothing's changed. He tells her to just place her hand on it and get it over with. In his head, he's already thinking how sad it is seeing yet another girl put her hand there and walk away crushed, because once again the machine's verdict won't change. But Petra can't help but wonder if this is really the right thing to do. She knows she's going against her grandfather's wishes, but her heart didn't change just because she wanted to become an adventurer. This isn't even her only dream. She remembers something she once asked Nagi. Why did he keep risking his life in dungeons working as a porter? And he replied like it was nothing, because someone had to do it. It sounded so casual, so detached. But she understood exactly what he meant. Entering a dungeon without the protection of Aether was like stepping into fire. And yet, he still chose to make a difference. She felt ashamed of doing nothing when she had natural talent. At that moment, there's a knock at the door. Outside, Rasha's waiting. She says it's kind of ironic. Petra went in and took the test again. And she wasn't even in there for 30 minutes, so obviously the result is what you expect. But then she notices something in Petra's hand, a little golden badge. Petra walks past her without saying a word, while Rasha just mutters that it's a shame. Petra really was a great coworker. Back to our guide, Nagi's talking to Agnesa, saying it's hard to find adventurers like that. And even harder for something like this ant nest mission. It's insanely dangerous. Agnesa says she knows. The problem is its schedule for tomorrow morning. There's no more time. Nagi says, well, we're screwed now. Like a scout's gun, it just fall from the sky. And then knock knock, someone's at the door. Wait, change outfits? What the Petra just walked in like she's ready to take on the world. Girl came prepared. Both of them are staring, thinking whatever wish was just made, it worked. She's radiating confidence. We cut to that other group of explorers and they're freaking out, saying this has to be some mistake. How did that white rank girl suddenly jump to gold? The red-haired one agrees she's never heard of something like that before. The guy with the mustache says he doesn't know either, but apparently her talent was so intense it broke the machine. The butler steps forward and swears on his entire reputation that the result was valid. She earned it. Not long after, as he reheats his tea, the old man says it's been ages since he felt this way. Finding a rare gem like her out of nowhere. That's something truly insane. Suddenly, the red-haired girl shows up again saying they've got a problem. Turns out that Petra, yeah, the same one who showed up yesterday and took the gold rank test, is actually the granddaughter of a certain someone. When the guy hears the name, he straight up drops his tea and says they're screwed. Meanwhile, the team is getting ready to head into the dungeon. And honestly, I'm still not used to this version of Petra 2.0. Naji asks if she's still bothered by what she said earlier, but she just replies that she doesn't even remember what she said. We see Agnesa telling Petra that she knows there's nothing wrong with her. But if she really wants to join the guild, there's one thing she needs to ask. What are her goals as an adventurer? If she came face to face with a monster that couldn't be beaten, what would she do? Fight or flee? Before answering, Petra remembers what Naji once said about situations like that. And then she responds, in a case like that, you just play dirty, load up on armor, and use every cheap trick in the book. Agnesa stares at her, kind of disappointed. Then she turns to Nagi and asks what he'd do. He stands there really thinking it over. He's already faced off against unbeatable enemies like the Lich and Agnesa herself. So he says it doesn't matter who the opponent is, you have to have the will to charge in and defeat them, no matter what. Agnesa gives him a thumbs up while Petra says, That's not what you told me last time. Back in the carriage, Petra's thinking that in the end, all she can really do is give it her all. But then Niramira calls out to her. And of course, both she and Deshitar are complaining that it's unfair she made it to gold rank before them. She explains that she already had the talent. It's just that she chose to become an inspector instead. That calms everyone down and you realize, oh, okay, she was basically a hidden boss all along. Naji says he actually feels kind of relieved. He thought she was just a scout, and now seeing she's gold rank gives him a bit more confidence. She smiles and says she doesn't have much experience, of course, but she already memorized the entire ant nest layout and even wrote a whole book on it. He congratulates her, saying she came well prepared. But he also warns her he's been to plenty of ant nests before as a porter, and the real problem with this type of dungeon is that you can't ever fully prepare. Ants are monsters that just keep coming non-stop. Plus the layout sometimes changes, so she better brace herself for what's coming. Standing at the tunnel entrance, everyone's excited. From above, Petra observes the crowd and says that judging by the number of people, it really is a C rank. Naji agrees but reminds her, this is a raid dungeon. It's made for multiple teams to work together. And not only that, but this particular nest is bigger than what he's used to seeing. That's when someone asks who they are. A guy behind Naji steps forward and introduces himself as the raid leader and a member of the No Answers Guild. His name's Gerald, gold rank, and he's clearly a weirdo. He locks eyes on the most obvious thing about Petra, her shiny golden pendant. Then he says, you must be the captain. She shakes her head and points to Naji, saying, nope, it's this guy here, the porter. Gerald notices Nagi's white rank badge and bursts out laughing, acting all creepy and drooling. While he's dying of laughter, Nagi's teammates who think he's some kind of caged beast, which, let's be honest, he kind of is, just not for the reason they think. They're watching him laugh like he's insane. Petra's not letting that slide. She steps forward and tells Gerald it's pathetic to judge someone based on a badge alone. And man, even his nose looks weird. With that strange tongue of his, Gerald says he's got a suggestion. Of course, he offers for Petra to ditch her team and join his, especially since their current scout is just a bronze-ranked guy crying in the corner. Naturally, she turns him down flat, says Naji is more than qualified. Gerald laughs it off, saying he'll just have to show them how a porter is really supposed to be treated. Then he calls out to his teammate, telling the kid to hurry up and get over there. The poor kid comes driving himself over, carrying this load that's like 5 times bigger than he is. Stops, bows his head, and apologizes to Mr. Gerald. Petra immediately points out that the boy's clearly at his limit, but Gerald just shrugs and says that's exactly how it should be, keeps them quiet. Then he turns to the others and says that's how you handle a porter, tells the little girl to take notes. Petra sighs, already expecting they wouldn't respect Naji, but she didn't think it'd be like this. Naji says it's fine, while noticing that all the other porters are totally overloaded. He'd forgotten what this world was like after spending time around decent people. Petra has no idea, but most folks don't even consider his class as part of the adventuring world. Suddenly, someone else chimes in saying that sure, he's a bit eccentric, but that doesn't matter. And here she comes right on cue, another flashy, over-the-top type. These guys are basically drooling over Miss Johanna. She smiles and says not to worry, things will be easy now that she's here. Yeah, she's feeling herself a bit too much. She's a bronze-ranked priestess acting like a legendary heroine. Naturally, all the fools around her are falling all over themselves for her. Gee, wonder why. She turns to Naji and says he should be grateful she's there or else their team would have already failed. Then she throws in a little pose and tells him to hurry up. She's sure this is going to be a delicious little adventure. Right, you already know this is going to be a disaster. And on her shoulder, a little snake. Yeah, clearly the one who's going to screw everything up. Naji immediately notices the thing on her back. He feels something off and Petra asks what's wrong. He says it's nothing, just a bad feeling. For now, they'll stick with the group like they were told. And so begins the descent into the ant nest, completely different from other dungeons. Adventurers have a nickname for it, the Mouth of Hell. It's the kind of dungeon where the monsters just keep coming non-stop. When they meet up with the main raid group for a second, Nagi thinks maybe they got lucky. With his team being inexperienced, it'd be tough to handle alone. But not even 30 minutes in and he's already realized these guys are exactly the kind of adventurers you only hear about in stories, for the wrong reasons. His teammates ask what he means. But come on, it's obvious. These are the reckless ones who ruin every dungeon they go into. Doesn't matter what kind of dungeon, monster, or trap, they just charge forward and swing at everything. No tactics, no coordination, just brute force. And of course that ends up wrecking the entire formation. Then there's the second type, the stubborn mule. No matter how many hints or warnings you give, they keep making the same dumb mistakes. One of the big guys, cheeks puffed out, snaps that they're the main group and tells everyone else to quit acting like they're in charge. But obviously, they keep heading the wrong way and wondering why it all feels like a maze. And finally, the last type, the flirts. The one's more interested in romance than surviving. Johanna's right there flirting with the clown who's acting all smug. Worst kind of party members, the ones who think they're in some fantasy dating sim instead of a death trap full of monsters. Nagi realizes it. This entire group has every ingredient for failure. One thing about ant dungeons is that they tend to respawn regularly. When adventurers come in and wipe everything out, the ants just repopulate. So clearing it is more about cleanup than extermination. And maybe that's why this group is focused on speed, just rushing through everything instead of taking their time. The problem? The faster they move, the more the porters are getting left behind, totally exhausted. If the porters die, these guys are going to have to start hauling their own gear, and they'll be way less effective. But they don't care. Maggie asks one of them if they want help, but the guy waves it off, says he's used to it, so don't worry about him. Still, Naji offers to store their bags inside his, but they refuse. This is their job, and they're not giving it up, no matter how hard it gets. The problem for our boy right now is that he's more worried about these so-called adventurers who are clearly about to ruin everything. Suddenly, one of them stops and yells, asking what the hell everyone's doing. He screams at the others to move their useless selves already. Petra steps up and tells him that's not how you clear a dungeon. The porters are exhausted, but he just scoffs and says porters are a disgrace to real adventurers. She was starting to feel some sympathy, since her own leader used to be one too. That's when the guy pulls out a pouch of money and says he's going to prove just how worthless those guys are. He tosses 10 coins onto the ground and says whoever brings them back first gets to keep it. Petra tries to warn them about the risk, but the poor porters all bolt toward the coins, shouting that it's worth more than a day's pay. The moment one of the kids touches a gold coin, though, a swarm of ants starts rushing in from every direction. The kid turns around terrified, but at least Gerald actually steps in, sword drawn, and slashes through all of them. He saved the kid. Sort of. At least the boy didn't die. Naji admits the guy's got a trash personality, but skills. Yeah, he has them. Still, that doesn't mean he's okay with using a poor porter as bait. Even though Gerald wiped out the enemies, the kid hurt his foot. Porters usually don't wear armor, since their whole job is carrying supplies, not fighting. And to make it worse, even though they've got a healer in the party, it's not like she's going to pay attention to someone like him. Maggie speaks up, saying the kid could have died, and asks if this is how they always do things. Gerald snaps at him to stop defending his kind. He says this is how business works. They're getting paid, and he handed out money. He turns to the injured kid and asks if he's mad. The boy says no, he's actually happy. Then Gerald steps right into Naji's face and tells him to get it through his head. That's how you treat a porter. Just because he's the leader of a party now doesn't mean anything's changed. The mustache guy jumps in and says the mood's getting kind of gloomy, so why not use this little argument as a chance to split up and cover the different areas? They've got 3 zones ahead. Why not let Nagi's group handle one while they take care of the rest? Maggie thinks maybe that's not such a bad idea. The problem is people like this rarely let you leave without strings attached. Still, anything's better than staying around them, so they sort of agree to it. Cut to Zone 1. They're rappelling down a rope. When they reach the bottom, it's a massive open chamber. This was it, the real nest. Up until now, everything had just been tunnels. Meanwhile, back with the others, they're all laughing, saying that gold-ranked idiot doesn't even know the area should be avoided. All they have to do is wait until those chumps attract the monster's attention, and their own dungeon path will be a breeze. They have no idea they just sent the group straight into the death whirlpool. And yeah, looks like Petra didn't know either. Or maybe she just realized it now. She shouts that there's a monster swarm coming. She thinks it's coming from below, but nope, the creatures are descending from above. Nagi's standing there thinking he still doesn't understand why Agnesa made him captain. A porter like him was nothing but a joke, but if this role was given to him, he's going to live up to it. He tells everyone get ready for battle. He charges in first and orders Nero and Deshitar to cover the flanks. The first attack comes in. He already knows the amp's strength lies in those quick stabbing legs, but he's used to Agnes's speed. This is nothing. He dodges the first blows and circles behind one of them, stabbing it right in the gut. Being a porter, he's seen the weak points of countless monsters. After all, once the adventurers do the killing, it's the porter who has to go examine the body, and over time, you learn where each monster's weak spots are. He lands the first clean slash dead center, and immediately charges toward the next 2. He also knew about how ants communicated using pheromones. That's why he threw in some stinky mushrooms to mess up their scent trails and throw off their coordination. Nero compliments him, saying the captain's really on point, but now it's her turn. She charges in with her Nyan punch and sends 4 of them flying. That's when we finally see how that copycat ability works. When she uses her skill, the creature mirrors it right after. Deshitar says he's not getting left behind either and charges forward with a swarm of golems. Up on top of the creatures, Knife can't help thinking how much easier life is for those who use Aether. There's no need for analysis or hesitation. Even so, he tells everyone to be careful and not to waste too much energy. Then suddenly, the ground starts shaking and he wonders what kind of tremor that is. He tells Petra to use her ability and figure out where it's coming from. Poor thing's frozen in place trying to focus, mumbling stuff about what she learned back in school. But the moment she sees an ant charging straight at them, she panics, starts crying, and bolts. Nagi realizes that in the end, she really is inexperienced. The fight's turning into chaos. Normally, it's the explorer who's supposed to call out monster positions. Now their firepower is stuck all the way on the other side. Nero's trying to recharge her Aether, and Deshitar is out of fingers to summon anything. While blocking an attack, all Naji can think is that he's supposed to be the captain here. but he's barely managing to hold this battlefield together. Being on the front line is a whole different story compared to hanging back and watching with a backpack on. And for all the criticism he threw at those 3 saboteurs, the truth is, there's nothing worse in a dungeon than having a weak party. In the end, those guys weren't the burden. They were. But then suddenly, someone behind them yells for everyone to get down, unless they've got a death wish. The guy whips out a fishing rod and unleashes a lightning slash that cuts through everything in sight. Wait, what? That guy's a white rank swordsman? Aren't white ranks supposed to be weak? Apparently, he's one of the people Agnesa mentioned. Oh yeah, that's what she said, right? That someone would show up to help. Next chapter opens at the Twilight base. Nines is asking Agnesa if it's true. Did she seriously send the newbie to that guy? She casually confirms it. Yep, she sent all of them to be trained by Mr. Poo-Poo. Clearly, this isn't great news because the 2 immediately call her a demon for doing that. Those poor kids just became adventurers. They'll never survive the perv of the guild. Guys, it's one of your own. Back with Nagi, still confused, asking who this guy even is. He's never heard of anything about this swordsman rank either. Petra immediately asks Nagi if he saw what the guy just did. He took out all those creatures without even using a special ability. Nagi says of course he saw it. He wiped everything out using nothing but a stick. Poo-Poo then asks why they all look so stiff. He's there to help, just like Agnesa asked. That reminds Nagi of their conversation, when she told him she had someone perfect to support him. He'd asked who and she just said not to worry. He'd know who it was when he saw someone with a certain personality. Nagi asks if he's the guy with the personal issues, to which Poo-Poo responds that Agnes is being pretty harsh with that description. Deshitar and Nira Mira then comment that he looks kind of familiar. Oh, that's right. He's the guy who robbed them in the street. That jerk with the yellow bear head even says he has a pretty generic face. Might have been someone else. Then tells them to let all that go. He's here to help the rookies like Agnesa requested. Still, he's clearly unimpressed, saying the new recruits from Twilight Guild are total garbage. Nagi tries to calm him down, but Poo-Poo just keeps going, says even if their firepower wasn't terrible, they burned through all their ether before even finishing off a bunch of weaklings. Now they're just dead weight. It was painful to see just how amateurish and all over the place they were. They didn't even realize they were heading straight into the death spiral, a bizarre phenomenon where the ants just keep walking in a loop, one after the other, non-stop. It happens because of the pheromones they release. One ant takes the wrong turn, the pheromone trails cross, and suddenly they're trapped in a never-ending circle. They literally walk like that until they drop dead from exhaustion. Now I'm not sure. Those guys from earlier knew all about this. That's why they lured their group in that direction. The moment the spiral shifted toward them, those scumbags had a clear path to move at it freely. The team starts saying those guys are pure evil, but Poo-Poo cuts in, saying they've got it backwards. In a dungeon, the worst sin isn't being mean, it's being weak. They were abandoned and left to suffer simply because they didn't have the strength to keep up. And if they had picked a fight with those guys, every single one of them would be dead right now. Nero says there's no way she's losing to those blockheads who can't come up with a single strategy. But Poo-Poo simply replies that this just proves how strong those people actually are. If they're pushing forward with no plan whatsoever and still surviving, that just shows they aren't weak. Besides, the 2 standing here, they're even worse and just as dumb. Then he adds that Agnesa already told him they had some potential, but that they were way too soft. That's why he was given permission to train and discipline them however he wants. Nero instantly says no thanks. There's no way they're trusting some weirdo they just met. But Poo-Poo says maybe this bit of info will change their minds. He was the one who trained Agnesa when she was still a clueless rookie adventurer. The moment everyone freezes in shock, he changes expressions completely and announces that the lesson is starting. Charges in immediately and tells everyone to come at him. Back at the guild, Miss Hungry's sitting there thinking to herself that mindset really is the most important thing for an adventurer. But if you don't have the strength to back up those goals, then they're as fragile as cotton. That's why she hopes this mission will help them gain the power they need to truly become companions. Back in the dungeon, explosions everywhere. It's like some sketchy website. Everybody's getting whacked from every direction. The poor crew can't believe they're already collapsing under the pressure. Nero decides she's going all out. She'll use her ether and blow up the whole area. But Poo-Poo says she's way too honest with her attacks, dodges easily, and suddenly appears out of nowhere. He says that unfortunately, her movements are still too predictable, then smacks her hard in the shin. Her whole leg lights up red. And he immediately calls out that it's obvious she just learned that ability the way she's using it like a total amateur. She gives up and says fine, she was forced into this anyway. Naturally, she summons her new brutal golem. Poo-Poo compliments her and Deshitar starts getting all proud, only to get smacked right in the head with the rod too. Poo-Poo explains that the bigger your summon is, the slower your body becomes. Then he says it's time for the next one, and this time the attack is headed straight at poor Petra, who just started all this, the poor girl. A net of ropes flies out, catching her completely. She's all tangled up now, basically a cocoon. Thankfully, it stops there. I was worried it was going to get weird. Watching all of this, Nagi starts to realize maybe that stuff about Poo-Poo training Agnesa wasn't a lie after all. He knows his turn is coming and he's got to stay sharp, especially since this guy's range is nearly impossible to keep track of. Here comes the first swing. Naji locks in, focuses everything and refuses to hesitate even for a second. He needs to block the tip of that rod. The strike makes contact with the edge of his blade and he tries to redirect it, but it's too late. He still takes the full brunt of the explosion. And then Poo-Poo grins, saying that he reacted exactly the way Agnesa said he would. If he were a truly talented adventurer, he would have blocked that hit. But unfortunately, someone who relies purely on physical strength is nothing more than a well-trained civilian. He was basically a trash bag, just like that pendant he wears around his neck. Harsh? Yeah, but that was me going easy. What Poo-Poo wants to see is that so-called special sword technique, the one that managed to slice through trash. Nagi says it's too dangerous to use and Poo-Poo laughs, asking if the kid actually thinks he can hurt him with that sword play. He says he can block any attack, so Nagi should just bring it on. Nagi nods, steps into position, and warns that he's not going to apologize afterward. Poo-Poo glances at him sideways, a bit surprised. It's a draw-style stance. Not bad. The positioning is actually decent. Still, he's sure Agnesa's the type to exaggerate everything. That's just who she is. Poo-Poo's already getting bored, wondering how long he's going to have to wait until the sword starts coming out of the backpack or flaring up. Naji slowly opens his eyes, realizing the attack is ready. He warns Poo-Poo not to go whining later. Poo-Poo starts to say he needs to stop hyping himself up so much. Then he sees the slash coming. And right there, he realizes that technique was no joke. Next thing you know, he's on the ground, totally wrecked. Dune had been charging up aura for 3 whole chapters just to get folded like this. His plan was to earn everyone's respect. But instead, all he earned was a blade to the face. Sometime later, he wakes up in a panic, begging them to go easy. When he looks around, yep, everyone's staring at him. And of course now, Deshitar and Nero want to know if they can learn anything from this guy. He actually got taken down by their captain. Poo-Poo snaps at them to shut it, saying he let his guard down. And he wants to know if Maggie was seriously trying to kill him. The kid needs to realize he didn't survive that attack because he's amazing. Most people would have died from something like that. Nagi says he did warn him it was dangerous, but Poo-Poo fires back, saying warning someone doesn't mean you get to blast them with raw aura out of nowhere. Thing is, our boy has no idea he even used aura, and that's when it hits Poo-Poo. This kid doesn't even know the kind of power he's got. If he had mastered that ability, Poo-Poo would be dead right now. That's not some basic attack. This is a power he's only heard of from the Forbidden Eras. But why would a simple porter be able to manifest something like that? Now it makes sense why Agnesa was keeping an eye on him. Poo-Poo says fine, the kid's impressive for his level. But now it's time for round 2 of training. He's going to show Naji exactly why he's Agnesa's master. Maggie asks if he's stronger than Agnesa, and Poo-Poo says, well, that's part of it. But the real reason isn't just because he trained her, it's because of his vast knowledge of ether. That same knowledge is what allowed him to instantly read all of their weaknesses. Let's be real, their flaws are practically glowing in Mion. He points to Nero and says it's obvious she has zero understanding of her own energy. Her power to boost her physical strength is basic stuff, but what she doesn't realize is that her ether is currently all concentrated in the center of her chest. That flashy blue punch of hers, it's just that, flashy. There's no real force behind it, and from the way her shockwave moved, it's clear she has zero control. Her only saving grace is that this ant nest happens to be the perfect place to train. Her training plan, he's calling it, escape from the infinite ant room. He's going to throw her into a chamber with a single tunnel, and she'll have to charge through it, while dozens of ants come charging straight at her. Then he turns to the wannabe summoner and tells him he's lucky. His ether and his skills happen to sync pretty well. Of course, Deshitar immediately says that's obvious. He's a genius, after all. But Poo-Poo isn't buying it. He says he's pretty sure that ether of his is inherited, probably a family legacy. But with the talent he's got, he's never going to surpass that certain someone. Deshitar's surprised that Poo-Poo already knows about all that. Poo-Poo tells him what he really needs now is to develop awareness of everything happening around him. That's why he's going to be blindfolded, gagged, strapped to the back of his monster, and forced to fight relying solely on the golem's senses. And of course he's dropping him in a zone packed with as many ants as possible, just to make sure the training actually means something. Then he calls for the coward with her belly hanging out. Out of everyone there, she was the one whose talent came closest to that of a true high-level adventurer. But at the same time, she was also the most inexperienced and completely lost. So he makes it clear they ended up trapped in that ant swarm because of her. Even a rookie bronze rank explorer would have spotted something that obvious. What she needs to develop clearly is intuition. She'll be taken to a pitch-black cave. No sight, no sound. Inside, she'll have to rely purely on her instincts to move. Her objective is to reach the center and find something he hid there. But she better be careful, because there are countless sleeping ants in that cave. And the moment she makes a sound, she's done for. Then he turns to the porter kid and suddenly lunges at him. Nagi reacts immediately, draws his sword, and blocks. Poo-Poo tells him straight up, their training's going to be a fight, a real one. As the sparring starts, Poo-Poo points out the boy's first issue. He overanalyzes everything. He's always looking for patterns, habits, trying to break things down. But that doesn't always work. especially in dungeons where what you face is often completely unknown. He has to be ready to deal with stuff that's beyond what his calculations can cover. Pupu knows Naji developed this fighting style to overcome his lack of physical strength, but now that style has turned into his ceiling, one that's holding him back. He's already figured out that the boy has an inferiority complex, and that's the very thing keeping him from becoming a real adventurer. Nagi snaps back, saying that makes no sense. Pupu just told him earlier that if he had even a little bit of talent, he would have easily blocked that hit. And since Pupu knows so much about talent and aether, then he should understand how hard it is to live without one. Pupu admits that maybe he doesn't. He used to think the same way, but after studying aether deeply for years, he learned something important. As Naji probably already knows, there's something in this world called awakened aether. And there are 3 ways it can awaken: through talent, through equipment, and through an unknown method. Obviously, awakening through talent is what 90% of adventurers experience. It's that letter you receive when unlocking a new class or profession. That's the easy path. The moment your talent awakens, you're changed forever. Even a guy who's never touched a sword before, if he awakens with a swordsmanship talent, could wipe out an entire squad of trained knights. Nagi says yeah, he already knows all that. It's obvious. Pupu tells him he should really start paying more attention to his own case. The second type of awakening happens through special tools, equipment. That's rare, and most gear isn't strong enough for someone to become an adventurer just by using it. Nagi nods and says that's why relics are so highly valued. Pupu agrees, he's absolutely right, but there's something almost nobody knows. There's a big difference between a relic and an aether type item. Both have special abilities, but unlike relics, which have fixed powers, aether equipment actually grows with the user. The gear itself is aether in physical form. You can feel it. It's tangible. Then he tells Naji to wake up and realize he's already using an aether-type weapon. That fishing rod-turned blade he carries, that thing called disappointment? Yeah, that's one of them. A rod that can catch anything. Nagi, realizing what he just saw, says there's no way someone can be that strong without having some kind of talent. Pupu tells him he's still thinking too small. When someone is born to wield a piece of equipment, they have to become one with it. Perfect harmony. Only then can they pull off things like this. Right then, the tip of the fishing hook drops to the ground and starts burrowing into the dirt. What? The guy just used some kind of forbidden fishing technique to reel in a fish from underground. It's a creature with traits of the soil it was caught from, in this case, the ant nest. And yeah, eating it would boost his strength even more. He opens his mouth wide, and for a second, you think he's gonna take a bite, then boom. Full-on gulp, just downs the thing whole. Nagi just stands there, stunned, having a full-on existential crisis as his understanding of the world unravels in real time. All because of this drooling, long-nosed maniac in front of him. Now it makes sense why Agnesa, gorgeous as she is, called this weirdo a pervert. And he even called Nagi sweetie. Yeah, that tracks now. Next chapter starts with Miro's training. She's trying to get through the ant corridor. But no matter how many ants she knocks down, she can't clear a path forward. She realizes that at this pace, it's gonna take her about 1,000,000 years to escape this place. Meanwhile, all Deshir's managed to do is run from ants. He takes a fork and says to go right, but that's from his point of view. His golem goes left, dead end. Boom, explosion. Elsewhere, lovely Petra is crouched near a corner, hiding from ants and trying to sense their presence. She realizes these ones seem way more alert than the others, probably because they're used to surviving in the dark. Problem is, that's not her environment. So how is she supposed to deal with this? The one thing keeping her going is knowing that if it were Naji, he wouldn't give up. He'd pull something out of his backpack and figure it out. So she digs into her own pocket, pulls out a cheap little string, some beginner explorer item. But for her, it's all she's got. She focuses, throws the item forward, and the moment it hits the middle of the room, she expands her aura. She can feel it bounce off the ants, allowing her to navigate forward. Glowing and graceful, she slits right through the swarm, completely unbothered. Meanwhile, back with Naji, he's getting body slammed into the floor. Calling this training is generous. This is a one-sided beatdown. Pupu casually says, yep, it's a lesson. But if the kid's not careful, it might turn into a funeral. Naji stands up again, only gets smacked across the sword, launched away, and boom. Pupu's already behind him. Creepy guy leans in and whispers in his ear, flicks his forehead, and says he left himself open. And wow, he actually says beginners taste amazing. Lord help us all. Nagi tries to strike back, but the lunatic just dances around him, saying he's way too slow. In a last-ditch move, Naji calls for gluttony, pulls out a mushroom, and chucks it right at the freak. It bites, explodes, and nothing. Pupu walks out of it completely fine. He laughs, saying it's funny how both of them use equipment, but the gap between them is still massive. So Naji demands, fine then, tell me the secret already. And Pupu? He just shrugs and says, I have no idea. Because everyone has different gear. Every piece of equipment evolves in its own way. His only job is to break Naji's mindset. The one where he keeps telling himself he'll never get stronger. Because the truth is, Nagi's convinced himself he doesn't have any talent. But it's okay. Pupu's been there too. He thought the same way for a long time. And that's exactly why he's here. To help Naji break that thinking. He's going to help him figure out what his body is really capable of. After getting wrecked, Naji just lays there, laughing like an idiot. He finally gets it. Poo-Poo was right. He'd been lying to himself this whole time, convincing himself that someone like him could never become a real adventurer. Because he watched so many people, some who started with him, others who started way after, reach the places he wanted to be faster. And all he could do was sit back and watch as everyone pulled further ahead. In the end, everybody gave a like on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers, activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.